Good evening and welcome to the Verona Borough Council Workshop meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and if we could please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Christine, would you like to do the roll call?
Sure, thank you.
You're welcome.
Dave Matlin. Joey Warren. Ray Suchovich.
Here.
Sylvia Provenza.
Present.
Trish Redzek Showalter.
Present.
Vince Flota.
Here.
Rhoda Wharf.
Present.
David Recupero.
Present.
Christine D. Runk, present.
Let there be light.
I thought you were, and that's why you're doing it.
Okay, Joey and David are unable to attend this evening. Under registered comments from the public, or I'm sorry, under emergency additional agenda items, we had an exec session to discuss personnel, and that was on Thursday, June 23rd. We're showing no registered comments from the public at this time, so we will move to comments from the public on agenda items only. Council will now hear comments from the public at this time on agenda related items only. Please approach the podium or raise your virtual hand. Clearly state your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Having no comments, we will move to discussion items from the advisory boards and commissions. And the first person on our list is Tim Long. Tim?
Hello, everybody. Yes, Parks and Rec is going to be doing Shakespeare in the Park on July 9th at 7 p.m. It is being held by the New Renaissance Theater Company. And this is an unrehearsed Shakespeare play that they've been putting on. It's free to the public. Yeah, that's unless anybody else. Trish, do you have any more information on that?
It's going to be totally free and very exciting. Everyone's invited to bring a lawn chair to Railroad Park and some snacks and a blanket. They're really looking forward to doing it. They perform all over the Pittsburgh area throughout the summer. It's something we were looking to do before the pandemic, but never worked out. So we're really excited to be able to welcome here to Verona. I hope many of you will come by on the 9th, 7 p.m.
I will be making an event on the Verona Parks and Rec page and sharing it around. So hopefully the borough can share that too, and everybody can come out. We're gonna have a good time.
How long is the event? Is the play?
The whole night. I'm not actually sure. I think there's probably some variability.
No, I'm just curious.
Yeah, they said
Hour,
between
hour.
1.5 to 2 hours.
Yeah, that's what I would think. Probably like 2 hours.
Yeah, sounds nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, the name of the play is The Merry Wives of Winchester. Windsor, I'm sorry, The Merry Wives of Windsor.
I think Pittsburgh.
Yes, they have. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Tim, and thanks, Trish. Mr. Gould, also you're going to speak on the MAP grant?
Yes.
I'm trying. Yeah. Give me a second.
Just switch on the side somewhere. Probably on the bottom.
If you take it out of the holder, it's easier to find.
There you go.
Thanks for bearing with me. Council and mayor do have a copy as well. Thanks. I thought you would like to see. Can you see? Oh, Zoom. Got it. We're good.
All right, so, as we all know, comprehensive plan is an opportunity to leverage the diverse voices of council and community to create a basic roadmap for the strong future. Strategic roadmap that provides plans which can help preserve Ronda's vision for the future. Social citizen, economic basis, preservation of property, maintain our infrastructure, emergency services, and safety. Also, we don't have a roadmap. When we start to do things, it becomes an upset fire, and we're scrambling to get things accomplished. We can also provide a great baseline framework for ordinances to avoid reinventing the wheel each time we can. That we can talk about the process. We can protect revitalizing the borough from future problems with subdivision, redevelopment of existing properties, environmental and future development. So things begin. We can put things in place that we have right now. It's also helpful to practically every grant make sure we want to do in the future. So right now, Mike had started, Mike Forback will be the top slide one. I hope to see other people who are looking, they can try to do 100, whether we need to have enough positive to avoid doing this more further. But I think that's a baseline that's just what we're trying to sort of have a figure sitting there to work with. Now, how we can fund this thing is the MAP programs from DCED. The Community Economic Development is one of the largest most grants for community planning and department plan. Through MAP, municipalities, we can apply for grants, the borough will be responsible for 50% of it. It's a 3-year program. It will start in July, being awarded the fiscal year. And what we're hoping to do is right now we have monies. We're just getting the walking grant, and then we got 28 grand for that. Now, if we go for 100, then we wouldn't be responsible for 50. So the Trish is 28 walking grant, the borough, we only have to cover 22. I'm saying, I'm hoping it doesn't even be that much. Christine and Talia are just getting a money today. And some other people we have right now, some of the legwork, something we can do, we wouldn't have to, we would not that 100 grand and the full month. But again, like I said earlier, we have to support people right now on board. With the people we have, I think that'll be a great time to do it. They tried doing this in the 70s, last time they did it, it's been almost 50 years. I really believe this is our time. You can probably they get this done around.
They actually had one in 74. Do we have access to that?
I found something that looks like it was from 1974.
I never saw it. I'll be honest with you. So I never witnessed it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is where we're at. I never know as much as I don't understand. And raise tax, I mean, we probably go up to roads and different things, and other stuff, and somehow,
Thank you, Dan.
you're welcome.
Under new business, we have none, so we will move to discussion items. And first item would be review current solid waste ordinances and health and safety ordinance proposal. And Christine, would you like to speak on that?
Yes, thank you. So the this particular agenda item falls out of the issues that we've been having with county hauling, in particular this year, 2022. As you are aware, county hauling did not issue bills to many residents for, well, 2.5 years, and then ceased collection of trash and recycling because those accounts were delinquent, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's been a lot of discussion over recent months. So how do we avoid this? How do we, prevent that from happening in the future, given that it is in the current contract with county hauling that is good for another 2 years. It expires May 31st of 2024. So, we have 2 more years. And, one thing that was discussed was requiring that the garbage bill is put into the owner's name. Well, it turns out that if you look at, and I just discovered this today because I couldn't find this prior to about 3 hours ago. If you look, it's page 16, or sorry, page 13 of 16 under section 210-20 residential. So 210-20, part A, mandatory participation. The very last sentence says no billing will be in the tenant's name.
Wow.
So we have it in the ordinance that the garbage bill must be in the homeowner's name, not the tenant's name. It does bring us to an enforcement question. Who is going to enforce that now? And then the second part of the conversation that's been happening over the last few months is, do we want to switch to a model instead of county hauling, billing individual households for the garbage? Did we want to switch to a model where we do a lump sum payment on a quarterly basis, the borough pays it, and we then it becomes a lienable item because the borough would have paid the expense, and the homeowners would be billed directly for the garbage bill on a quarterly basis as usual. That money would get collected by Keystone Collections, for example. Could also be, Oakmont Water could do it. They're not my top choice for doing this. There's also Turtle Creek Valley Cog. They have a billing service. The only company that's willing to give a quote without us having committed to this is Keystone. So they're working on that. Other places say, yeah, if you go down that road and council commits to it, then I'll put forth a proposal, but I'm not going to basically waste my time if this isn't something you're really going to do. And so the idea would be, first of all, we'd have to renegotiate with county hauling to switch from billing the household model to a lump sum model paid by the borough. Frankly, I can't imagine they would be opposed to that because it means takes billing out of their hands and they wouldn't have to deal with delinquencies anymore. And so could we potentially negotiate a better price because we just took that off their hands? They won't have delinquencies. Presumably their pricing is based on having delinquencies. So could we get a better price? And then we would enact a health and safety fee, basically, that would get billed out by, I'm just going to say Keystone, doesn't need to be Keystone, but just for conversation purposes. And then Keystone would bill the health and safety fee that comes into the borough, and that covers, the garbage bill. And other communities that have enacted a similar kind of fee, they actually charge a few dollars more per quarter than just a garbage bill. and then they use the money toward anything health and safety related. So that could be fire, police, cleaning up garbage on private property, code enforcement, because that could be health and safety, building demolition. Like, I mean, the list goes on and on. Like, I mean, so much of what we do really is health and safety related. And so I bring this to you because one, we actually have it here that says the billing has to be in the owner's name. So how are we going to enforce it? And two, do we want to go down this road of changing, renegotiating county hauling and changing it up and moving toward like that health and safety fee instead that's billed through a third-party billing?
My only concern is if we renegotiate, they're gonna want more time to act on it. They may say, you know what, yeah, we'll talk, it's gonna talk, but let's add like 3 more years to our contract.
Well, that would be negotiable. That's a negotiable item.
I would not be opposed to looking into it, that's for sure.
Does our COG, the one we belong to, doesn't do anything like that?
No, they don't.
And the other thing is too, like you said, we would be responsible for collecting the money.
Keystone would
You would
be.
have a company.
Well,
Keystone,
would,
yeah.
okay.
And then they can, they can file liens and go
But
after
we
them.
would still go back to our problem of garbage piling up and not being taken.
Well, we wouldn't, because county hauling would never have any delinquent accounts because we'd be paying them. And so they could never stop picking up garbage because they would always get paid.
In other
So-
words, they wouldn't have to be dealing with it.
Right, no, I do understand
I'm
that.
for having that done as far as having the owners of the property be responsible, because the other way is not working.
So, I mean, the pro is that would never have the problem of garbage not being collected because the bill would get paid. The downside is now the delinquents are things that we need to deal with.
And the bill would go, if you have a 4-unit apartment, the bill would go to the owner
Go to the
of
owner.
the apartment.
That's right.
He would pay,
Now-
probably, would he be paying for 4 units?
So let's back
Yeah,
up for a
that's the
second.
question.
Yeah.
So let's back up for a second. Our ordinance also says, and there are actually some discrepancies in here, so it seems like this is in, a cleanup is in order. Under. Where is it? Under the definitions, which is 210-5.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's the second page at the bottom. Commercial is defined as multifamily dwellings and townhomes of greater than 4 units, blah, 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 blah. The BIU definition is 3 units because of safety requirements like sprinkler systems and so forth. So I'm not sure if that's something where we would need to redefine commercial residential to be in line with what the BIU does. It's just a question, I don't know. There's that, but then like further on down the line, if you go back to 210-20 residential, that was on page 13 where the thing about no billing will be in the tenant's name. That one, the sentence says, except unless otherwise exempted under this chapter, every owner of developed residential property except multifamily dwellings of 5 or more, not individually owned, blah, 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 blah. So we have some inconsistencies. We just need to figure out, is it 3, 4, or 5 units that constitutes commercial residential? So if it's commercial residential, then those buildings do not need to have county hauling, for example. They can instead get a dumpster of their own and put it, on site, that kind of thing. That's what we've written up. So this would be, this would subject any homeowner plus any rental property that's 1 or 2 units for sure. And then we have to figure out, where's the cutoff point for this? And yes, they would be billed on a per unit basis because, they're all generating garbage.
Right. I'm all in favor of looking into it, that's for sure.
Yes.
When you say,
We have to do that. We have to do that.
so when you say looking into it, you mean looking into the,
Going with a collection type agency, see if county hauling's willing to renegotiate. Like David said, we don't have to go with the net. If they want to just, oh yeah, we'll do it and extend the contract, we don't have to extend the contract. You know, here's what we'd like to do, you know. But I mean, if it saves all the BS for people that don't pay their bill, and the garbage sits out there for weeks sometimes, or our DPW guys got to go pick it up, or whatever, or they throw it on their neighbor's yard, what's it hurt to look into it?
I think by law, they have to pick it up.
They don't, because
They
it's in our
don't.
contract that says if they don't pay more than 90 days delinquent, they can stop picking up the
Oh, they
garbage,
can't.
which is why we had the big issue this spring.
Okay, what's your approach to this? First of all, we have to clarify our ordinance. So that would take place. We need to-
Yeah, we would definitely need to. I mean, I think a lot of this is already good, but
Right.
there are some things where it's like, well, is it 3, 4, or 5? And, you know, like there's just a typo here. And so there are some things like that. And I got this directly off E-code. So we need to just clean that up and, you know, get rid of typos and such.
But we don't
Um,
need to clarify that before moving forward with.
We don't need, no, we don't need to clarify that moving forward. What I can do, if council is interested, I can, you know, ask other places that are willing to give us a quote once we're serious about it, because they just don't want to waste their time putting together a quote for something that's
Right.
just kidding. we're not
Nothing.
doing
I
Yeah.
think we're serious about it.
I
No,
agree.
I agree.
And I don't think anyone's been hard enough to do it.
Do we need a motion? I think we're all in favor.
I don't think we need a motion because we're not
Okay.
like voting really. It's just really to give me some direction on, am I
Definitely.
really calling these people or not?
Let's do it.
And I think we have.
Yeah, so this, so then, I'm sorry, this is like hard to talk and write down notes at the same time. So there's getting some quotes about what would it cost from the different places and how would they handle it. There are gonna be pros and cons to all the places, you know, like the big pro of Keystone is they already have all of the information because they're already sending out, you know, tax bills. Whereas a place like, you know, Turtle Creek Cog, we'd be starting totally from scratch with them. So, and there, you know, there are pros and cons, but maybe they're way cheaper. I don't know. So I can look into that, and inquire. And then there's the next bit about, you know, with this health and safety fee that would cover the cost of it, you know, is there interest in, I mean, we need to do something. So we need to collect the money to pay the garbage bill. Which means we're going to need an ordinance to enact a new fee. And so that also involves Craig, getting him involved to, you know, work on that.
Is the fees that are not being collected, is it more so rental units or a little bit of, I mean, I'm sure it's a little bit of both, but which is the higher of the rental units or people that own their homes?
I would guess rental properties, but the issue too was that the tenants that were listed in those properties were frequently the tenants from, you know, 8, 10, 12 years ago. And so if you get a piece of mail from somebody that lived there 12 years ago, you chuck it. And so that happened. The other thing that really happened, and this happened with homeowners too, but it seems like the tenants got hit like a little worse than the homeowners, was that they just weren't getting bills. I mean, for 2.5 years, they quite literally never got a bill, or they didn't have a name for whoever was living there. So they wrote current resident. But then other people and not insignificant number of people came to the window or called or emailed saying, you know, I tried for 6 months, 2 years, like, I mean, long periods of time to get the bill put into their name, but County Hauling wouldn't do it because they said, well, we won't because there's a back payment owed on it. And they're like, but I didn't live here. And they're like, and now I do. And it's like, well, we can't switch it over. It was just like, not good there. And so I say the tenants got hit worse. And I think probably a lot of that's just because of turnover in
I wonder
rentals.
if we could, it probably wouldn't make any difference the way things are. You know, it would be a question for Craig. If these owners of these rental units, let's say, you know, they just blow it off and not pay it, to pull their occupancy permits.
So it's not the owners that are blowing it off. It's the tenants, and
But-
we have no recourse over the owners because it's not technically the owner's bill at this
But I
time.
thought that, if I was a, owner of a rental, it's my responsibility to pay the bill. If we do decide to go to a collection agency, it would be my responsibility, then it's my responsibility to get it off of you as the tenant.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would agree with that. The thing that gets tricky is we have something in here that says no billing will be in the tenant's name, but it's not been enforced. We still have to figure out how are we going to enforce that? And in terms of where we are right now, I think it would be a tough sell to landlords to say, hey, there's this thing that's in there. Now we're gonna like force you to pay this stuff when it's not in the lease, like maybe like it's not in the agreement that the landlord pays the garbage. We just right now don't have a leg to stand on.
That's gonna be their problem.
Exactly,
I
that's the
agree.
way
So
I
I
feel.
would not worry about what they have to worry about.
Yeah,
Shouldn't that be in the rental permit
That's
also?
there, yes.
It should state in the rental permit that the owner of the property.
they could
Everybody
be,
has a different
We have no
lease.
control over the lease.
but that would be if I owned that house that was a rental, that would be my responsibility to tell you, hey, Vince, you know what, I'm gonna start collecting garbage. You gotta pay me, what is it, $63 a quarter from now on. And if they start not paying the owner of the house, I feel that, we should look into having the right to, pull their occupancy permit. In other words, you know what, your tenants are gonna have to leave in 30 days.
Oh, so you're talking about moving forward, not retroactive? Yeah, I think moving forward, we can do stuff. I mean, we
Yeah.
can talk to Craig at the end of the day.
That's
Yeah,
what I'm
moving
saying.
forward, yeah.
But going backwards, I think that's a
No, no.
non-starter.
No, going
Okay.
forward. I mean, because everything's gonna be new. We're going to a collection agency and that should be implemented in it. If the owner of that rental unit does not pay the borough, then we're gonna pull your permit, for occupancy.
Yeah,
It's not our problem that, your renters ain't paying it.
Yeah, that,
That's your problem that you own the home.
I think we're in agreement.
And- okay. And so we would need to also then just update this ordinance to also say what you just said, where it's in the owner's name, they're responsible for paying, blah, 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 so that it's, that's all clear and spelled out. I also think, just to put it out there, we would need to do a significant advertising campaign because about half of the properties in town are rentals. And so, we're talking about half of the households being impacted this by potentially. And so we're gonna need to like send out the letters, put it on Facebook, basically put it everywhere so that it's known that this is coming
Right. Get it out there.
and
That-
just
that's what I
get it
was
out there.
saying, is move forward. It needs to be on the document.
Great.
But you know what, Keystone also can be a part of that. And if they're gonna start being a collection agency, they also have a responsibility. They have all the addresses of the owners.
So they're willing to,
We have-
they are willing to do a second mailing. It just costs money. So we would need to decide, we're willing to have Keystone send out the letter to everybody ahead of time, whatever, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever we decide in advance. And then they said they're happy to send a letter. I mean, they get paid for it. Or, it's something that we do in-house that's,
Well, either way, it's gonna cost us
Yeah.
money. Whether we do it on our own or have the agency
Yeah.
do it. It may cost a few dollars more,
Couple
the
bucks here,
agency.
couple bucks there.
Right.
In a nutshell, it's gonna be very profitable all around.
Right.
You won't have the headache and end of the lease.
Mm-hmm.
So you're gonna spend a little.
To
to
give-
accomplish it,
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
positive goal, yeah.
so I will continue to look into that. I'll talk to Craig. I'll talk to the various third-party vendors that can do this kind of billing. This is gonna take some time, so don't expect this on any business meeting anytime soon for voting. Um, But I have enough information to go on and keep moving.
Christine, is anybody actually paying some of this? Have we gotten some money back?
Well, we don't get it because the billing is
Well, not to
directly
us. I
to,
mean, is anybody paying their bill?
there are still a lot that are not paid up.
Not
It
paying?
seems that, people are either putting their garbage in their neighbor's garbage or county's just picking it up anyway because it's in an alley. They don't really know
Right.
which garbage can goes to which address
Yeah.
necessarily. But there still are many delinquent
Still quite a
accounts.
few.
Yes, I mean like probably 80 or so. Like there are a lot of delinquent
Yeah, that's a
accounts.
lot.
When we start working on this, I think it's imperative that we do something with commercial property. Right now, a lot of businesses are using our public garbage cans. They don't have a refuse company picking up their garbage and dumping it on ARB. I've watched them do it. There's a lot of other commercial have apartments upstairs. But I think we need to show, or they need to show us proof that if they're not gonna go with County Hauling, then they have BFI or Republic or something. They have to show us that they're having someone
Made a note of that.
make that mandatory, absolutely.
Okay,
Good idea.
so I'm good on that. Does anybody have anything else? Okay, I'm finished with that.
Okay, thank you, Christine.
Sure.
Next on the list would be Parks and Recreation Board bylaws. Vince, you want to give us a report on that?
Yes. The new bylaws for the amended bylaws were submitted by Parks and Rec, a few months ago. They were then sent to Craig. Craig made his recommendations and his things. One of the sentences and the wording, and make sure it was all legal, worded correctly, and then Parks and Rec reviewed it and approved all the changes. So moving forward, just the business meeting or our council.
That type of thing.
That wasn't me, actually. That was Trish, Laura, Leah.
It takes a lot of time. You went back and forth. I could go to
Yeah, it was everybody. I think we're happy with where it's at now, and now we just need to.
Anything else on that, Vince?
No, just look over these and.
Okay,
Put it on for the meeting, if you have questions.
okay. Good job. Thank you, Vince, for you and your
Thank you.
committee. Thank you. Now we're going to go down to number 3, MOU with Steel City Rowing. The subject was public dock inspection. And Trish, that's you. You want to tell us about that?
Sure. You may remember several meetings ago, the topic of the public dock came up, and what are we doing for maintenance on the public dock? There are 2 docks. There's Steel City's dock as well as the public dock. In the past, we had an agreement with another entity, but recently this year, it came up that Steel City would be willing to maintain the dock for us. And that sounded like a very good opportunity, given that they are right there and keep a very close watch on their dock immediately next to it. And they have a volunteer who does many of the repairs, so it's very cost efficient. But we decided to write up an MOU just to formalize this, and I have put it up on the screen. I believe everyone has a copy. I'm not gonna read through it, but does anyone have any questions or comments on it? I think it's fairly straightforward. Essentially, they would inspect annually as well as after any major storm events. They would go ahead and perform minor repairs, major repairs in excess of $500. They would let the borough know in advance for the opportunity to accept or decline. And we can renew it every year or before March 1st. And I think that's the gist.
I think it's nice we have it in writing. Before we only had a verbal agreement. And I think this is good.
Yes, very well done. Thank you, Trish. And then,
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do we figure out who's doing the inspections?
Yes, it's a volunteer with Steel City Rowing who performs this type of work. Correct. Mhm.
So I'm sure they're gonna check and make sure.
Mhm.
They want their own.
They're signing off on it, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
If they're in charge of maintaining. They probably want to inspect it pretty rigorously, so
Their safety,
Yes,
Absolutely.
Sure.
that's why I asked. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll ultimately be responsible, but I think they will keep as close a watch as anybody on both stock. So
Right. They're using it, they want it to be right.
absolutely. So it
Yes.
sounds like we're okay to put that on the business agenda.
Any other questions on the Steel City Dog? Really? Okay. Number 4, salt shed location. Trish, that's you also.
Yes, that is me and actually Christine and I have had some discussions. So I'm going to open it up with recently the Infrastructure and Asset Management Committee decided or looked at a list of locations that was proposed by Matt Pitch, our engineer, I think with some consultation from you, as well as AJ, our DPW foreman. So our committee, which is Ray, Joey, myself, looked at that list. And we have some options. However, none of them are free and they would all require some additional research or negotiation. And I think council is still in agreement that the highest priority for this winter is to get a salt location back in Verona and no longer have to continue sharing with Oakmont. So the highest priority is getting it into Verona. Unfortunately, the options will require more work than can be completed, we think, before this winter. So the committee is prepared to reluctantly recommend that we move it back to Arch Street with improved environmental and best practices, environmental controls and best practices to minimize the deposit of salt immediately on or near the riverfront property. However, I was talking with Christine and she did want to present an alternative, which I like.
Well, I mean, so I just want to say there's no good place for it. Let's just
Right.
put that right out there. There is no good place in the borough for this thing. So the issue that we may face if we put it back at Arch Street related to environmental concerns is that we can't afford to mitigate environmental concerns of a salt shed in a floodplain. I had a conversation with a person from LTAP and he basically said, yeah, nobody can afford to do that. People talk about that's best practice. It's what we should be doing. Nobody can afford it. PennDOT doesn't even do it. So I don't know that we're really gonna be able to do any kind of mitigation for environmental factors down there. The other downside of putting it down there, well, there are two as I see it. One that's like the immediate. If it's really a 1-year thing, there is some infrastructure required to put a salt shed down because we need a concrete or an asphalt pad to be put down so that the salt has a place to rest. And that's not something that's movable. So that's one downside. If as I understood it, the recommendation was for 1 year to
Yes.
sit there.
Mhm.
And so there's that. The long term, I know how things sometimes go. I've only been here 10 months, but I see a pattern.
No.
And and so it's entirely possible that it's put down there and then it's just there forever.
That's kind of what happened with Oakmont.
And that's kind of what happened with Oakmont. And so, I just want to point out that within a couple of years, the VOC trail is going to be built. And because, and there will be funding for that, in part because the trail system is in alignment with Allegheny County's comprehensive plan. And so they are throwing money at these kinds of projects because they want them done. So, and we just, at the last meeting, or maybe it was the one before, basically said, hey, Penn Hills, yeah, you submitted these grants on our behalf, we're in agreement. So we're talking about if the money is had, then there will be money to design and build the section of the trail that's in Verona, not on Allegheny River Boulevard. So very soon, Verona is going to become a riverside trail town. And that means people will want to come here. And one end of the trail is down by the public dock. And so I'm just thinking long term, do we really want a salt shed as the thing? Like, oh, I rode 13 miles from Boyce Park and I land in Verona and look at the salt shed. It's beautiful. So it's a little, it's not so attractive as a thing for people to enjoy when they land here. And I'm just spitballing, but like, it would be pretty cool if there were a place down there where people could then hang out. They just rode their bike. Maybe there's place for a food truck that sells ice cream, because everybody knows that after you rode your bike for 13 miles, you have to eat ice cream. And, or whatever else, just to create some other kind of park environment down there to expand Railroad Park and make that something that's consistent with a Riverside Trail community. So that's just sort of what I'm thinking about. And then, and I talked to Matt. Matt's recommendation is actually to put it, we're on this side, to put it on that side in that parking lot. I know that's probably not so popular because it would mean a loss of some number of parking spots. Matt's estimating 6 to 7 parking spots if we put it basically right up against the garage and put a permanent roof with permanent sides on it so that it looks like part of the building as opposed to, one of those canopy things that we've been talking about. And of course, a fence around it. I know, Ray, you have some concerns about it. But with respect to the parking, Matt's recommendation, and I think I agree with him on this, is we can open up this lot after 5 p.m. Except on council meeting nights, because everybody likes to come to these and fills up the parking lot. So
We still have that other parking lot down below. Quite a few parking.
there is, I mean, the other thing is if you look at it, there's probably no loss in parking borough-wide if we can get a little parking down by Arch Street that's, something creative in there in that space if the shed weren't down there. So anyway, that's, and then it would be permanent. It would just live over there and it would be out of the floodplain. It's on borough-owned property. We don't need to buy property. We don't need to lease property. So that's sort of the recommendation.
Okay, so what if we just said?
It's up to all you.
No, but I'm saying, you said all these ideas and that stuff, so where are we heading? This year, you're gonna keep it down there? And then I hate to see that we're gonna invest in cement if we're planning on moving it again,
There is a
That's what I
cement
thought.
pad, there is a cement pad down there.
where the salt shed is now.
Well, where it was, yes, Arch Street.
You're right.
Do you know what shape it's in? I haven't been down there to see what shape it's
I
in.
think it was in pretty good shape. It was
What I
always
don't
covered.
what I don't understand is, and I get everything that you said, but as far as near the river and everything, this glass of water is contained, and it's near the river. And I understand that maybe you have some seepage from this side, but once you start pouring it, it's going down all the drains, manholes and everything
Into the river.
into the river. The salt I'm talking about.
But it's leaching. That's not helping.
I guess my question is what, number one, there's a concrete pad down there that could be usable to get us through till we figure out where our final destination is. As far as up here, we talked about that in the past. I just don't think you want to bring it into the business district. I don't care what kind of walls you put up. I mean, you're gonna take up more, I think you're gonna take up more than 6 parking spots. When they bring a triax to deliver salt, you need a lot more room than 6 spots. And all the VOP trail, the VOP trail is gonna be, it's not gonna be going through that yard, correct?
Might be.
Along.
It's going through that yard?
Going along it.
Yeah.
It ends
Thought
ends
about it
down.
like 6 years.
Not only that,
It
Ray,
can't go through that yard. What are you gonna do with all them other houses over there? You're gonna get rid of them houses?
it's
No,
going
like,
on the road.
Along Arch Street.
It's going
So
on
it goes
Arch
by
Street.
it. Mhm.
Okay, so, and then where's it going up here? It's gonna come up East Railroad, right? It's gonna come right in front of the Borough Building.
Mhm.
So you're gonna see it there too.
But the other thing on that, Ray, and you know as well as I do, dealing with salt, all these years, when you leave the yard, it leaves nothing but a white trail. Constant white trail, and it's gonna look like that. The salt, the residue.
Yeah.
Then when it dries up, you're gonna have this big, long, salt trail from the tires.
Have we ever looked or even considered a location on Sandy Creek Road?
Matt provided a list of properties that
There's a lot of
are,
properties there.
they're just privately owned. So that's the issue, is that we would either need to work out a lease agreement
Yeah.
or we would need to purchase
Mhm.
land.
Hi, Jim.
Well, there's some owners that may be very flexible in doing that.
I agree with that. I mean, there was a place down on the boulevard that at this point, try to get a lease with that person and get something built before winter, I just think we're under the gun time-wise now.
Yeah, but it's
But
something.
for the future, that would be that could be an awesome idea.
You know,
You know what I'm talking about.
I know, but I think you have a Lotus owned property there.
We also own property up in, off the Wildwood too. I talked to them about that.
We can do that. I think we need to sit down with Chris or Artie or one of them and say, hey, listen, is there a possibility? You know, we can work something out.
Rhoda, one of the options Matt gave was on the railroad property. Do you,
That's what I was,
What's that?
one of the options Matt gave was on the railroad property.
Good luck.
Did you mention you have any contact there?
You know what? I wouldn't even attempt to do that.
Yeah.
Really?
It's not gonna happen. You
Well,
can put
we-
salt on Russ's property.
We dealt
talked-
with him and he's very, very.
Or
I
it's
believe
difficult.
Mike Warbeck talked to the railroad about 4 years ago. And we were looking for a place to put more park spaces. And it just tore down the junkyard part. Because there was a liability issue because the fence was rusted, and kids were getting in there and playing with rusty junk. And the railroad ended up putting it up that area. But we had asked them if they would grant us a throughway to put a green space or a park there. And they said they were open to ideas like that, but the park was out of the question because it was kids playing too close to the railroad tracks. Now, if they were open to the idea, but didn't want to do it because of liability, they might be more open to an idea of putting a salt dump there because it's a less liability issue. Because kids are going to be playing in it, and it's basically an industrial site. And that's what that property has been used for hundreds of years. As industrial.
Isn't that a little bit of a flood zone there? too?
I don't know. I don't think.
I think that there is.
I
a
can, I can,
portion.
go- I can approach them. I can stop up and approach.
I mean, and it's a movable salt shelter, correct?
Right, right.
It is. I mean, there's still
So-
infrastructure that we would lose, like a concrete pad.
Yes.
But-
I mean,
but
you can-
generally you can move it,
pour a
yes.
Concrete pad and then if you approach the railroad and told them that it's a movable salt shelter. So if it were to become an issue in the future, you not have the structure or building that through way. And that would help us out.
I just think
I'll
at this
stop up
point,
tomorrow.
I just think at this point in time, we're already,
Oh, no,
Friday,
I'm not
we're
talking
into
this year,
July,
I'm talking
right,
about
I
in the
understand.
future.
you know, all the problems we had going up into Oakmont with our guys.
Mhm.
We need to figure out what we're gonna do for this year for them.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're running out of time and here we go again.
Well, I think this year we're going to March.
I think it's doable.
That's kind of what we have run.
Do you think it's doable to find an alternative for this year?
Well, not for this year, but let me go up and I'll have a report that I'll.
Did we,
I mean, that way it's out of sight too. It's
Yeah.
not in the business district, it's
Right,
not in the
right.
recreational district like area.
did we, when we talked, tried to look back in old minutes today after I talked to you. I didn't see anything about buying it. Did, we talked about buying the concrete blocks and the canopy?
Yeah.
Did we make a motion to buy that?
I
or
thought
we-
we did.
I
don't-
thought we did
I-
too.
I-
And
It
and
might
I,
have been in the workshop.
and I couldn't find it, but I mean, you know, we discussed it, but, you know, again, here we sit, July 1st almost, waiting.
Yeah, but I hate to invest in something like that, if we're planning on moving everything.
That's,
Like I
that's
did.
movable though.
All right,
That's movable.
Just pick them up and move them.
well.
It's still time though, you know, still project.
And even if you build somewhere else, you're gonna still have to use them.
Right.
Right.
So they're not gonna go to waste.
Okay, let me do my homework there, but I also think if that's like no go, I really think we should investigate with, some of the owners, well, Sandy Brook. There's quite a few nice locations, it's all flat. It takes 2 minutes, but.
Rhoda, and I agree with you. I agree with that, but looking elsewhere. The only thing I would say about Sandy Creek, now, you know, I'm just looking at the other side of the coin as a driver for all these years. These guys are driving, and if you get down into a middle of a storm at rush hour, getting all the way down to Sandy Creek could be hard for them. You know what the traffic's like down there. You know, I mean, what about like possibly Nikki's property on ARB? Talking to him and Tony and seeing if we can lease a spot from them. They got that big piece of property down there.
So they leased the Duquesne Light.
Well, do they lease the whole thing? Has anybody contacted them?
No.
You know, I mean, I can call Nikki and talk to Nick,
Call Nikki.
you know, but
Doesn't Avalos still,
Can you call Nikki?
Church Street property
Ask
also? Across from your shop?
Well, yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
they might be willing to rent
they use all that,
most of the parking lot, some of it.
Even across the street from their business. Use it for parking.
I know right across, right before Giant Eagle,
Yes.
that fenced in area looks like it's used as a dump. There's
Yeah,
a
we
whole bunch
use a
of
lot of
lifts
his
and stuff,
equipment, yeah.
Mm.
It's-
and it's rusted out equipment that's not being used for that.
well, they bring a lot of it back in the winter time.
When
Let me
we,
see if, do you want me to do anything for Sandy Creek or not? Or do you want me to ask Chris or Artie about the property on Wildwood?
I try to get as many options. as I can.
it doesn't matter to me. I understand. You know, I just think we need to get moving some way, you know. We're already January or June, July 1st.
Okay, I need to know what dimensions are we looking at? So
Talk
we
to-
have to talk to Matt. I have to connect with you tomorrow.
Yeah,
Because
let's-
if they're saying, yeah, well, how much space do you need? I want to be able to intelligently say, oh, you know, this many feet times this many feet.
Yeah, the shelter, she has a quote for at square footage.
Okay.
Just remember, when you got a truck coming in to deliver salt, these triaxles aren't little vehicles.
Oh, true, true. We always have that.
Right, so they gotta pull in and, you know, just have
Right.
room.
Do you have numbers for me?
I can talk to AJ about that. AJ is be more knowledgeable and, I mean, I can give you a salt shed dimension, but you know, to Ray's point, we need room
Okay,
for,
I'll need
a
that
dump truck.
too.
yeah. So does it sound like then we're moving for, because I just looked through all the resolutions and the thing with salt that we did financially
Mhm.
was approving for the emergency purchase of salt.
Right. So
We just talked a lot about,
We
um,
always do.
about,
We got a quote.
yeah, we have quotes and all that kind of stuff, but was never authorized to actually expend those funds. So does it sound like we're moving that forward for a vote to, for 1 year, put it there, and then in earnest, look for a real place to put it?
Yeah, I think that
Yes.
because you rush things, sometimes it just doesn't work out.
Especially if the pad's in good shape.
You can waste money.
Yeah, I mean, the pad was in good shape. Now, is it big enough? I'm not exactly sure, but,
Well, it's survived all these winters, so I think we can wing it for one more year.
well, that pad, if you remember, that's where that boathouse was, the old boathouse. So that was covered for many years with the old boathouse.
Unless you or Ray or someone else can make magic happen and it happens right away.
So let me do my homework tomorrow and then I'll connect with you.
before we go off that subject, I'd just like to make one comment. We did go talk to the gentleman up at the railroad. He actually gave us a piece of property that we could use. He showed us where it was. Nice flat piece of property, but it wasn't big enough. I wonder if he might give us a little more.
Let me go talk to Russ and then I'll report.
Yeah, it was Russ that we talked
That's what I was saying. It
When was
seemed
that?
like he was receptive.
Pardon me?
that he
Was that
let the
recently?
Park on there. too. He
Yeah.
didn't want kids there.
Okay, good.
but maybe he'll give us more.
So.
Yeah,
the
great.
grants
That's
not being used
encouraging.
on it.
Sylvia, it wasn't that way.
A few years back.
Well, yeah, but.
I mean, it
a lot
wasn't
of
yesterday,
things-
but it was a few years back.
I think
But
it
remember,
was
he
more than a
gave a
few years
spot.
back.
He was willing to give a spot, but it wasn't big enough to turn the trucks around.
And that's what
He
you
may
need.
want to do more. Because
Well,
he's not
cleaned
doing
out,
anything
too.
with it, Rhoda. Wouldn't hurt for us to ask.
But now it's cleaned out too. Like back then, they still had that fence. Garbage dump back there.
No, that was
Plenty of
gone
room.
when, that was gone when he was going to do that. Wouldn't hurt to talk to him though. We could call him. Okay,
Thank you.
okay. Any more on this subject or shall we move forward? Any other questions, comments? Okay. Number 5, parking ticketing policy when street sweeper is down. And Christine, that's you.
Yeah, so this is coming up again. Had a couple of residents email or call wanting to know why we are enforcing parking tickets when the street sweeper is down. I think there was a precedent set in the past that when the sweeper was down, that we would call off ticketing. The signs, I checked in with the police, the signs do not say don't move or you have to move for street sweeping. It just says no parking these days and hours. And so I just want to, confirm, get clarification with you that the policy indeed is no parking or you get ticketed.
We talked about that public safety.
Back on March 8th, we talked about, that was one of our projects. We just didn't get the policy written yet because, but we all discussed it, I believe, and we all talked and says, since it isn't street sweeping, since the signs do say no parking Wednesday, Thursday, for the lack of just every day, every Wednesday and Thursday,
No
no
parking.
parking.
Yeah.
Enforce it.
I think that's totally asinine, given the parking shortage in the borough. And it does nothing but infuriate all of the residents. And
How do
It's
people
been like that
know?
my whole
How do
life.
people know that the street sweeper's down?
that's another
It doesn't
issue.
say street sweeping.
Well, everyone knows it's street sweeping because there's
No, it's
no,
not. It's not.
okay.
It is also for plowing.
The
That's
reason
why
why,
it doesn't
right.
say sweeping. It's for plowing
Right.
and sweeping. So
Okay.
it's year round.
The reason why we did that was back in 1995 and 97, we had two big snowstorms back then.
Mhm.
And mainly in 95,
Wasn't it
everybody,
93, Dave?
it could have been
Oh, the blizzard in
93.
93. Mhm.
It was a big snowstorm and everybody complained because there was cars, plowed in and they didn't plow their road because the cars all parked there. So we decided to make it just no parking on those days for both summer and winter. This way, if we do have a snowstorm like in 2010, that big one we had, people would have to move their cars so we could make room and clear the roads, more so.
I think those are exceptions to the rule. I think, end of story. Parking on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, no parking, end of story, no argument. You don't move your car, you're gonna get a $5 ticket.
It's only.
No
from-
exception.
It's only from what, 11 to 2?
Well, every street's a different time.
Yeah.
No,
It's
like
only
2
for a couple
hours.
So you
Yeah,
should
it's
have
like
a car
2
on the other
hours.
side of the street.
We're complicating everything by, saying, well,
Yeah.
it does this, does that.
That was our
That's
thoughts,
just-
Public Safety Committee, that
Yeah,
just keep it, no parking,
exactly.
be done with it.
I'm completely against it, but I'm clearly in the minority here. So,
The garage, if we can't do
I mean,
that.
that's partially my fault that we didn't get the letter written and put the policy yet.
I mean, I lived on the boulevard, and I had to leave my car every 2 hours. Or I had to park 4 or 5 blocks away from my car. So it's
Trish, I guess my question to you is,
Mhm.
which, you're against it, I understand, and that's awesome. What would you suggest?
we don't ticket if the street sweeper is down. We issue a text alert letting people know, and we double fines for when the street sweeper is working and people aren't moving their car or a snowstorm.
We can always change the fee on the fines, but what about people that don't text? What about people, you got some elderly people?
Right, so the worst
so-
case is they move their car or they don't and they don't get a ticket, but no one's mad at the borough. No one's calling Christine.
You know what, you see, we're doing special this, special that, special streets. No street is more special than the other. End of story. Stick to the guns. Parking or no parking Tuesday when you move your car. End of story. And we're going back and forth and wasting time on something that we shouldn't be doing.
I guess Christine got a complaint from somebody, so that's why she brought it up.
Yeah, the issue
Yeah.
I don't think will go away. Truly.
What, on North Avenue?
No, I don't know who's calling. Probably.
He's not on North, he's somewhere else.
Well, I'm just saying, you have to stick to your guns. That was the sign. That's what the rule is.
Yeah.
That's what
And
we're
it
doing.
doesn't matter if the street sweeper's broke or not. Move your car. I mean,
I mean, you just can't start changing policy.
yeah. That's been
You
like
have to
that.
change with the times.
So it sounds like it's no parking during those times. I can let him know. Thank you.
Do we need to have a policy?
I don't think so because the policy is no parking. So this is really just a confirmation that it really is no parking during those times.
We've had it for like 100 years.
I remember being one of the angry people, and saying, you know, they didn't even sweep my street today.
I hear
They gave me
ya.
a ticket.
I've gotten tickets.
And I was told for 20 years, that's not for streets. I didn't go parks on that day.
I have never. heard of
Plowing,
it.
sweeping, whatever.
One of the reasons I've never heard
Oh, I've heard complaints.
of moving your car.
I'm just saying we don't have to live with the frustration. We have the option if we choose to update a policy.
But I just don't see without, like Rhoda says, without complicating things. The old KISS theory, keep it simple, you know, just keep it simple. I mean, here's your policy, here's, you know, I don't see why,
So having 2,000 borough residents move their car twice a week is less complicated than updating a policy.
no, I'm saying, out of 2,000 borough residents, how many people go to work every day? How many people?
Since COVID, a lot less.
No, I agree.
Well, COVID's not happening now, so, you know what I mean?
I don't know. I don't know. You know, I just think to keep it simple for Annette, keep it simple for the police, keep it simple for everybody. That, you know, that, I mean,
Okay.
that's just my opinion, and everybody's not going to always agree.
I recognize that, and I recognize I'm in the minority, but this issue will come up again.
Probably.
No, it has been for years.
Even when we had to park on the street, and stuff, it was just automatic thing. It's like taking your garbage to the curb. You just do it.
Well, that, you know, that's kind of just like you're right, take your garbage to the curb. Don't take it out a day early. Well, I mean, they don't cite somebody for that, but they could, you know, because you're only allowed to take it out, what?
After
that was
4 p.m.
days before.
After
Mhm.
4 p.m. Okay, any other questions on that? If not, we'll move to number 6, LED street light shield policy. Christine, that's you.
Yeah, there's, so I got an email from a resident. So let me back up even before the email. So Duquesne Light now has a policy that when a street light goes out, they automatically replace the street light with an energy efficient LED bulb. So, and they did away with their LED program that the borough had taken advantage of over the years. So there's a gentleman who lives up on Maple, and the street light went out. So now he has this really bright LED light that he says is like shining into his house. He no longer needs night lights because his house is illuminated at night. His backyard is rendered useless because it's just so bright. Like, I mean, he provided pictures. It's quite bright. So Duquesne Light will install shields to make it, you know, to block it a little bit, but they cost $250. And so the question is, who's paying for the shield if a resident requests a shield? Is it the resident? Is it the borough? Is it a sharing? And we don't have a policy on this. And I have a feeling that as more streetlights burn out and get replaced with LED lights, this issue will come up. So just a topic for discussion, and we can, you know, write something up. Not really sure whose committee this is, but I mean, I can also write 3 sentences that says what the policy is. So it's documented. And I did alert this gentleman that, you know, there wasn't a policy yet, and I'd be bringing it to council. But, you know, and he's willing to pay for it. It's not about that. It's not about this one shield. It's about what are we doing in the long term.
Duquesne Light does not put them on,
They'll put them up,
Is
but
that
there is
yeah.
a cost.
it's $250
per
per shield.
included installation? is included?
Yep.
That's the same total. for one
Yes,
sheet.
yes.
What happens if you got 10 that week, that month? Which is highly unlikely. Now the borough's out $2,500.
Well, I would lean toward making that. Or multiple residents.
Maybe multiple
If
residents. or
one streetlight affects 3 households, maybe they
Yes.
can-
Maybe they could work with Duquesne Light and come up with a deal too.
But I think it should be brought to, you know, for future reference. And I'm sure Duquesne Light probably has a policy on that where if a resident requests that, it has to go through the borough first.
That is their policy.
Because I mean, we can't have everybody just, you know, paying for them on their own and these shields everywhere and it's blocking.
So it's
certain
defeating
parts.
the purpose of the street light.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that is their policy. The request for the shield has to come through the administrative office. And then it's up to us to decide if we're collecting money. Because we're gonna get invoiced. They're not gonna invoice the resident. They're gonna invoice us. And then we have to figure out, are we recouping that from residents?
You know, I think it's a little, you can like it a little unreasonable. You know, if it's that bright of a light.
They are
I
bright.
mean, I love streetlights, don't get me wrong. But when, you know, you have to put a shield around the streetlight, I think that's a little extreme.
These
So I
LED
don't
lights
think
are bright.
Well, they're making it our problem, it shouldn't
Right.
be our
No, I
problem.
agree.
So I think we need to sit down with Duquesne Light, I'm sure we have a representative. I had one guy that I used to communicate with, but anyway, years ago, he was even there. There has to be something that we can work out. That we don't have to address bright lights like that, I mean, come on.
Christine, I'm sorry, can you reiterate for me, the LED lights we got previously through the grant program
Mhm.
have a shield? That's why they're not.
That I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so.
It might
No.
be a different intensity.
That's what I'm
I just
wondering.
never
Must
saw
be
anything
different.
that bright.
I mean, the thing could also be like right next to his house where it like it, because there's, you know, obviously an intensity thing. The further you get away from the thing, it's little, you know, light dissipates.
We have the new streetlights on our street on Third, and I don't find them that blinding. But again, it's not on top of my house either.
Right.
I have to go up and see what, did you go up and look?
I'm not here
Oh,
at
yeah,
night.
that's right.
When you sent
Well, it will be
pictures.
tonight.
I'll have to go past that because I can't imagine something that bright.
Is it on Maple or in the alley?
Maybe.
I mean,
It's
he
in the
lives
alley.
on Maple, but I think the light's in the
In the
alley.
alley, yeah.
Actually, that's gonna be a good thing, safety wise.
That's what I was gonna
Absolutely,
say.
absolutely. Light a light and scare a
Yeah.
thief.
So how can that
Really?
light in the alley blind him inside his whole house?
Well,
He's complaining
He's
about
sitting,
the yard,
yeah, he's
too.
sitting in like on his back porch and
It's lighting up the whole entire yard. I see pictures of it.
it looks pretty
I didn't
bad.
think they were that bright.
Well, if it's, the alley's very narrow, so.
Yes.
The pole is pretty close, you know, to the road, and the road is very close to the yard, those houses up there. It's not like out here or where you live on North, the alley's half the size.
I mean, that happened to 20 houses on West Railroad Avenue when they built Giant Eagle and put them security lights in the back of the building. I lived on West Railroad. Took away my yard. My yard was renewed all day long.
Yeah, I like bright lights.
I do too.
Yeah, but then
I can see
everybody
his,
on that.
I can see his
road
concern.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
okay, so.
But I can't see us having to pay for it.
No, I think
No.
it would be the.
Well, that's not sort of fair to one person, because there's other people benefiting from this bright light too. So that's not fair to have stick one guy with $250. I just think we need to sit down. and think and say, hey, that's what it's-
Either that or he talks to his neighbors and see what they think.
So I
Maybe
said,
they're not
like,
affected
the whole
by it
block
though,
could pitch in there, or-
but they may not even be affected by it. You don't know. Some people like it totally lit up. I don't mind.
They might like it.
I don't mind. Light a light and scare a thief. That's what they said. Duquesne Light, that's their lie.
Yeah,
Well, Christine, okay.
I mean, I can call
we
Duquesne
decide
Light.
to do
I'm
that.
not optimistic that Duquesne Light's gonna negotiate with us on this, like at all.
We really gotta come up with a solution.
Yeah, but we don't really, right, we don't have an answer to this,
I just
so.
don't think the borough can incur that cost. But-
No, and it sounds like it's really affecting his quality of life. So if he's very hell bent on doing this, I think we should allow it. And
I
submit-
mean, unless it's in a school zone or a safety issue. Like I could see on First Street, like around Burner. People wanting to shield all them lights.
I think the
agree with
biggest
that,
thing for
because
this
that's
fellow is
school
it's his
zone.
backyard, but he wants to,
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, as long as it's not a.
Well, he wants to pay himself, right, Christine?
right.
He said he's willing to pay.
Oh, well, then.
Well,
so-
talking.
Well, I
We-
mean,
we
it's
still
the
might
issue
wanna-
is like in the future, what if somebody else is like, no, I want the borough to pay? What's the borough's policy? So rather than every time we need a shield, instead of talking about this, let's just decide now, are we paying for it or not?
Maybe we should.
And make a policy and then it's done. Like we never have to talk about light shields ever again.
Maybe we should have the person that's requesting light shield, not only the pay for it, they should maybe get a signed paper with their neighbors to it. Their neighbor might say, you know what, I haven't had my yard vandalized ever since this light. was
That's
put in.
right.
I don't want the shield put on.
Point.
So he should have, or she should have the surrounding houses agree to have the shield put on.
I think we should absolve ourselves from the responsibility.
Oh, yeah.
Make up a policy saying, you know, under these circumstances.
Because that'll happen. Someone will pay for the shield and then 3 neighbors will say, I didn't want that shield.
Exactly.
You're
And then
right.
what do we have to pay to get it taken off? What is the neighbor or,
We'll probably charge Belmont to take it off.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you agree with Vince's suggestion of a policy?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, not that we have to have one, but specifically that they pay and they consult with their immediate neighbors to make sure there are no
Just make
objections.
sure they're okay.
It's their responsibility in a nutshell. for everything.
Yeah, I kind of like that idea.
Good
That way
idea.
you're getting your neighbors,
Approve.
input. You're not,
Yeah, get the
And they
consensus
might,
of
if they
the
approve
people.
it, they might say, you know what, I'll pitch it $50.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's the safest way, you know, and it gets us off the hook.
Right. You're making everybody happy that way.
Okay,
Hopefully.
so they have to get their immediate neighbors buy-in.
You're on your own.
So do we think we could write up that policy and vote next meeting?
Absolutely.
So am I writing it or is a committee writing it?
Who's familiar?
Tricia's.
It's totally, it's totally infrastructure.
Well,
It could be infrastructure, it could be public
Yeah.
safety.
Well, I think so.
I'll write it. I got it.
She's gonna write it.
Trish, you write it, I'll proofread it.
Just like
You
in
know,
my,
in between giving birth and stuff, just.
There'll be lots of downtime.
Okay. Can we move forward now? We done?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, number 7, Strategic Management Program, STMP. Christine, that's you.
yeah, so I had a meeting with DCED a couple weeks ago, just to sort of do a meet and greet, what's going on in Verona kind of thing. And they highly recommend that we do the stamp program. We had actually approved doing like a mini stamp through Local Government Academy a couple months ago. But as it turns out, Local Government Academy is not recommending we do their program because we don't have 3 good years of financials to provide. But DCED said they're kind of used to working with communities that don't have good financial records. So, and they're used to like sort of piecing things together based on, you know, what they've seen around. And then they also do, as part of the stamp program, sort of like an operations audit or an operations assessment. And so that they make recommendations about improving operations and best practices and efficiencies and internal controls, et cetera, et cetera. So, they're really recommending it. They say it takes about 6 to 9 months to do this, to complete the whole thing. And I mean, there is a cost associated with it, but it's not, I can't tell you what that is right now. So the way the process works is you put out, do these 2 things simultaneously. One is write a letter to DCED, and I'll like come back to that in a second. And then at the same time, put out an RF. It is a key, and actually she said we can put out an RFP to get quotes from qualified individuals who would like do this thing. And then DCED also has a list of people that have done it successfully in the past. They're not necessarily saying we recommend these people. They're just saying these people have successfully done stamp programs in the past. And then we can choose however we want to choose. So let's say this, and they also said that this normally costs between $60,000 and $70,000. So let's just say it's $60,000. The match on it really depends on this letter. So the match is anywhere between 10 and 50%. We can write a letter to DCED saying, we think we should be at the 10% level because of the following reasons. And Taylor has pulled together and just gave it to me today, a bunch of data that we can pull from to say, this is what's happening with our population and demographics and income and assessed values and like all these things. And we can also point to our negative fund balance and say, basically, we have a negative fund balance. We really should be in the 10% category. So then they will, before we would apply to the stamp program, DCED would have committed to us to say, your match is 10% or 15%, whatever it is. So let's just say we are at 15%. We would pay 15% of the $60,000 and DCED would pick up the rest. And so to me, there's real value in, Susan's done a lot of things for us on the financial side. I think the operation side would be a really, really beneficial audit for us to have. But the real like amazing thing about the stamp program is you can apply for implementation funds through the stamp program. And so if it comes out that they say, hey, you need a comprehensive plan, which we do because we need one. Instead of doing a 50% match, the match money is still 15% or 10%, whatever that was. And then you can get a technology implementation. If they say, oh my gosh, your computers are from 10 years ago and your projector doesn't work except with that laptop and people can't hear you on Zoom. And I can tell you, we got a quote, it's like $19,000 to outfit this room. So instead of us forking over $19,000, get a technology implementation grant, and we could do this, the computers, if we want like, the code enforcement software, like any of that stuff, and then we pay 10% or 15%. So our system just became less than $2,000 in here instead of $20,000 in here. And you can, this goes over a 5-year period. So the quicker you do things, basically the more rounds of funding you can apply for. If you drag it out. So normally what people do is they do their stamp grant, and then technology is really fast to implement because, while you're doing your analysis, you can be getting quotes for cameras and all the gadgets. So then it's like, okay, here's the implementation grant. You're going to get the money because that's the whole point of doing stamp is to make these improvements then. And now you have technology 3 months later. Now you apply for the next round of funding and you get your comp plan, or maybe you get like some other thing. I talked to the finance committee about this. Finance committee seemed pretty interested in this, but I wanted to bring it to the full council for discussion, see if there are any questions, comments, concerns, whatever, so that I can, get that information and just get the pulse too, because, if there's not going to be a quorum interested in this kind of thing, then I'm not going to keep doing research and I'm not going to write the letter. It was my intent to write the letter this week using that data to make the case to DCED that we should only have to pay 10% as our match, given our financial position.
That's great. Thank you, Christine.
Let's definitely go for the letter. So
Yes.
just to clarify, whatever they say would carry through for the whole 5-year
The
period.
full 5-year period.
And it's in theory like a series of grants. You have the initial
Yes.
and then as many implementation. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's up to 5 implementation grants if my memory serves me. So that's a lot of stuff that can be accomplished. They won't do capital
Wonderful.
things, so we can't say, oh, we need to pave all the roads, give us $1 million and we'll pay 100,000 and and then get all of our roads done. They won't do that.
They want to do something.
They won't do they don't do capital, but they'll do sort of all of like planning documents, technology upgrades, like other things to increase efficiencies,
Yeah, we do.
all that stuff.
That's wonderful. Yes. Thank you, Christine. Thank you.
Yeah, right? We got our yellow duct tape on it.
Yeah,
Gorilla tape.
You're gonna write the letter for.
Yeah, I'll write the letter and send it off to DCED and see what they say. I'll get a sense of the timeline on that. Like if they're turning that around in a week, then I don't see any sense in putting out the RFP and then have like, I would just wait a week and see if they say, we're not at 50%. Because it's a way like we could get the comp plan for a whole lot less money, and there's just a lot of things we can do.
That is wonderful. Thank you, Christine.
Get rid of our paper folders and move to, digitize things that are searchable.
Right.
Just a lot of stuff.
So you have a sense, Christine, that they would make a decision relatively quickly. It wouldn't be like 6 months.
That's what it seems like. Like it seemed like they're definitely interested. in working with Verona.
Great.
They see that there's like good stuff happening here,
Great.
but we still have a history of stuff. And so
Good way
they
to
kind
put
of
it.
want to help us overcome
Yeah.
some of those, historical issues, and move things forward. They were really excited about being here. They're excited about what's going on. I think there's a very good chance we'd get funded.
Right.
It's just a matter of like at what level.
Sure.
And based on the email exchanges, it sounded like they make that decision pretty fast. As opposed to months.
Keep us posted.
All
That's
right,
great.
so I'll get that letter out and to be continued.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Christine.
Sure.
Great idea. Positive direction. Number 8, community garden. Trish, that's you.
Yes, thank you. Before I actually jump into that, I did mean to mention to Christine, I promised the Planning Commission that I would add to the agenda briefly a moment to talk about the MAP grant and just gauge our interest on that. With the budget discussion coming next month, I think these are 2 very good grant opportunities that we should think about. I don't know if there's any thoughts on either or both at this point, if there's a reason to maybe select one over the other, or if we could do 2 or not. But I just wanted to pause and have a moment if anyone had questions about the MAP grant, whether or not we should talk more about that at this time.
I think we go for any grant we can and apply for every grant, and if we get it, then we can decide if we want to use it.
But that stamp grant would be something that I think would be covered a lot of it.
The one Christine just talked about, yes.
Right.
So I'm saying Trish is talking about the different grants. If there's no, until we get to if we get accepted, then we can decide whether we want it or not.
Yeah.
I say apply for all of them.
So stamp replaces MAP.
So we can't apply for both.
See, that's what I'm saying.
I don't, I would need to double check that,
Okay.
but they were basically like, why would you do that?
Okay.
They do this.
You apply for both.
Yeah.
and pick which one.
Stamp sounds like it might be.
Stamp is only for comprehensive plans with a 50% match.
MAP, you mean?
I'm sorry, MAP.
MAP, yeah.
Stamp is, we don't know what match because I need to write the letter and get a response. And it's a 5-year implementation cycle.
So I think as far as the comprehensive plan, the plan that the Planning Commission laid out would get us a comprehensive plan for 22% if it's 100K. So as long as stamp is what we're envisioning, 10%, then it would be cheaper to go that way for a comprehensive plan, correct?
I'm gonna go with possibly on that. And I only say that because that only works if the output of Walkworks
Mhm.
and the sidewalk thing
Mhm.
goes directly into the comp plan.
Mhm.
And I don't think it's going to.
Why is that?
Like it's not gonna be the same format. It's not gonna be integrated. So
Okay.
we might be able to take that and a consultant can use what's been done
Mhm.
and then integrate that in. But
Okay.
I don't think it's a dollar for dollar. Like in terms of value, because like
Yeah.
if the consulting firm wants $100,000 to do a job,
Right.
they want $100,000 to do a job. They don't
Okay.
care that we spent $28,000 doing something else that's related. They're still going to charge us money to integrate that into the document.
Okay.
So I don't think it's one-to-one matching. Like
Like logistically, it may work out.
Logistically.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, well, I think we should see what percentage stamp would offer.
Yeah, because if it's over, it's a 30%.
done.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we could maybe revisit
It's like
that. and some other
23%.
stuff.
It's a
Right,
little more discussion, but still.
right.
Yes, a lot more than 10.
Numbers, you know.
And if you don't mind, just from my own curiosity, Christine, asking like if we could do both, or if that's just asinine.
I think it's asinine based on what they were saying, but I'll ask them.
Thank you. You can say a council
Well, you never
member.
know. I think things are pretty dumb. And I talk to people at the academy, like, no, people have done that. Like,
Yeah.
people have applied for both.
Sure,
You can use it in this way, so.
yeah. And there may be a reason I'm not understanding too. So
Yeah, I'll find out from them. They're very friendly and helpful. I'll just find out what they say
appreciate
about
that.
that.
Thank you.
All right, so to be continued.
Okay.
Okay, number 9, welcome sign on Wildwood Avenue.
One
David,
second,
what
one
is
second.
it
We have
you?
community
She's
garden.
not done.
Yeah, I went, I added 7B.
Oh, I'm
on
sorry.
your-
I thought Trish said, okay, let's go. Okay.
Well, we did, but yeah, the community garden I glossed over. So we have a community garden. If you haven't checked it out lately, we have some members here. Red Craig's been involved. Donald Wolf is modeling a zucchini. There's some produce here in the front. If anyone else would care for a zucchini, kale, or spices from the garden, please help yourself. So the reason we wanted to talk about this tonight is because the issue of finances came up. So we do have a few bed rentals. We can rent up to 9. Currently, we have 3 paid, but a couple other people are planting as we speak. So initially, being that this was born from the Parks and Recreation Board, specifically the Sea Green Sustainability Focused Committee, that we would have a restricted fund in the borough account. But after conversations with Christine, it became a little unclear as to whether or not that's the best path forward for the garden. Typically, the community gardens are associated with a nonprofit, not always. Some do work with the borough, but it has grown in magnitude from just being a Verona project to including members in the steering committee from Penn Hills and Oakmont. We anticipate it could grow more. So the question is, does this really make sense to be a borough project with all the liability associated with it when it's not actually like a borough staff person, like, you know, actually at the garden running things and so on and so forth. Did I leave anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I think
We're saying, does it stay as a borough project and we set up a restricted fund for the funds? Or do we perhaps consider asking the community garden to affiliate with a nonprofit in Verona?
I thought it was Pittsburgh. Who originally got the program?
Parks and Recreation,
Road.
Yeah.
Road.
with a grant and support from Borough Pittsburgh.
And it's like a 3-year program.
Right, two full growing seasons.
Who owns, Verona Borough owns the lot 100%.
Verona Borough owns the lot and pays the water bill.
Then, yes. I think it's, 'cause, I mean, it's gonna be maintained every year. So those
so.
lot fees, we should save. So it's, Grove Pittsburgh, from what I'm understanding, is they only help us for what, 2 years?
Yeah.
2 full years.
Mhm.
Mhm.
After 2 years, we just have to start financing this ourselves. So we
Mhm.
need to earmark those funds for whenever Grove Pittsburgh is around.
Right.
Have-
Mhm.
Okay, now wait a minute.
Yes.
I don't know if it's appropriate to use taxpayer dollars to do this on a garden.
If
'Cause
not,
this was well, you just said that,
we charge a fee to rent the beds.
yeah, but we pay the water. Okay, I just don't know. See, I thought this was just
We
a
pay the water.
community group project.
We pay the water for the water park. Good, too.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, forget about the water. I just thought this was a community group project.
Not community. but
It's
Parks.
Parks and
Rec.
Recreation.
Yeah, what I'm saying, how, aren't they affiliated?
No,
with
Parks
this
and Rec
project?
is directly underneath the borough of Verona.
Correct.
It is just like the police department and DPW, Parks and Rec. is
Or planning
just like
commission
that.
or, yeah.
So if that's the case, then we need to revise the fee schedule because we can't charge money for a thing that's not in the fee schedule.
Does anyone else have any different thoughts? Well,
You charge for each plot, correct?
we charge for half the plots. 9 are communities, so volunteers plant and we're donating to the local food pantries, and then 9 are available to rent.
And you have 3 renters. How many you have rented?
3, but there's been interest in 4 additional. So
Do we have a budget? I mean, has anyone sat down, you know, if you have a mission statement, do you have something that we can work with?
we do, we have a user agreement.
A user agreement with who?
It's for all the volunteers and for all the renters, everyone involved.
How much
But
do they,
how are you, when you're involving the Parks and Recreation? So all this is through them, the
Yes,
Parks and Recreation.
correct.
I was very unaware that that's.
Well, that's why we're having this discussion.
We
It's
started
a
this
suggested
what,
donation of $25.
Yeah, I
Like 4
didn't know
years
it
ago.
involved taxpayer dollars.
The other thing is we would not want to create a special fund because if they're $25 for a bed, we rent out 10 of them, like we're only talking about a few $100.
Mhm.
And I mean, like it was advised, I asked, Peter Vancheri, like, hey, should we set up a separate account, like totally separate account, separate fund for bike derby? And that's in the thousands. And he was like, no, not at all. So we would not want to set up a designated fund for this because we're talking about a couple $100.
Yeah, you
Just a different line item.
So we would have to mark it as a liability because the money would live in the general fund and we would have to mark it as a liability like we do with bike derby.
What's the Sharpsburg? Anyone done their homework on that? The community garden?
Yeah, most
What
of
do they
them, most of them are affiliated with a nonprofit. It's not uncommon for the boroughs to pay for a portion such as water, but most of them are affiliated with a nonprofit.
Well, you guys, aren't you nonprofit?
Mhm.
I thought,
Lower Valley, Foundation?
I thought the Lower Valley was working with the Parks and Recreation because you were nonprofit.
Why does this not
We do have
fall under,
money.
why doesn't this just fall under garden club? They're a nonprofit and
Yeah,
they're
I don't
gardening.
understand this because this,
But the thing is the borough owns property,
It could fall under garden club.
so
Good
are
call.
they going to sell the property to the garden club? Is that
That's
what we're
also
saying?
a discussion.
No, we can also
Lease
lease it for $1 a year.
yeah,
Well,
you
a dollar.
Yeah, paperwork.
You know, a dollar lease for 10 years,
Yeah.
20 years.
So
I
if
think
it's
we need-
leased, then the garden club would technically
For a
have
dollar a
ownership
year.
of that lot.
Right.
I wouldn't say ownership, they would have responsibility
Yeah.
for it.
I think we need to.
Well, if they're
tweak
leasing
this.
it, then.
Well, it's not owner, it's
yeah,
not
they would
technically
be
ownership.
renting it.
Yes, they'd
Yeah,
be renting it.
Tenants.
It needs to
Yeah,
be-
tenants.
This needs what?
We need to tweak this because it's something.
We-
Well, this is something new that
Yeah,
it's
that's all
in
we
place.
need
We
to
need
do.
to work the bugs out, that's
Yeah,
all.
that's what
Right.
And it's not gonna happen overnight. It might be next year till we get on the right track.
I
Right.
think it can happen now because if community group has a nonprofit, that could fall under that.
When you say community group, it sounds like you're speaking generally. Do you
Well,
mean?
don't The garden club.
You mean the garden
Has a
club, okay.
501c3, correct?
Correct.
So why can't this fall under that? And then it's over, it's done.
If there is a community group, they also have a 501.
Or the.
Well,
or
that's
the-
why I was
or the
clarifying.
community group.
Yeah.
Well, however you want to label the garden, club, like, it says your community garden. So I don't know.
No, there is a Verona community group
Yeah, I know,
who is
yeah,
also a
Right.
nonprofit.
yeah.
Right. And LVAF.
But I think that needs to fall under that nonprofit. You can get the
Sounds like it
independent-
needs more research. Some discussion with the different groups as to who's gonna take this on.
Yeah, but I think it needs to fall under some nonprofit. I don't think it's-
My other concern is if it's not an official borough thing, then the borough should not be receiving checks. So I really want to like clarify whose is it? And if it's ours, then we need to do things to make it legal to charge money to rent down there.
We're not in business.
I mean, technically, right now, it is ours because it was set up and run, and the grant was obtained by Parks and Rec, which is just like the borough.
Except that council is not making decisions about what happens down there. Council isn't saying we're
What do you
putting
mean?
in 10 beds and we're
No,
putting
it's
in.
Parks and Rec, it's according to the Borough Code, Parks and Rec. That's what they're creating.
Who's
Well,
in
if you
charge of
go
it now,
360,
Vince?
It states it in there.
Vince, who's in charge of this now? Who does
I believe
everybody,
Rhea and
Yep.
who is everybody answering to?
Well, it's technically Parks and Rec, which is specifically Rhea, Laura, and myself, but
Oh,
it's a little
okay.
bit complicated because I'm no longer on Parks and Rec. So this is yet another reason it's come up.
Okay.
I believe Rhea and Laura were
I just think somehow we should have to think.
Do we consider it a park?
I consider it a park. Verona Parks and Recreation is not just parks, parks and green spaces.
Mhm.
Verona Garden is green space.
Mhm.
It falls under Verona Parks and Rec.
So if everybody thinks it is falling under Parks and Rec, then it feels like stuff needs to be running through the administrative office because we need to be keeping track of all this stuff.
Is that what we want? Is that what you want?
Right.
I mean,
No.
I just think it should be something nonprofit. We're not involved with collecting money, handling money.
But then are we gonna get into the habit of Verona Borough obtaining property to build things on and then giving that to a nonprofit?
We're not
It should have
giving it.
automatically
We're letting
been
that
given to
on.
a nonprofit. It should have been done that from the beginning.
Well, it couldn't have been. Because Verona Borough is the one that we had to obtain the property.
Property.
We did that through Craig.
Well, somehow Craig should have spoken up because right now it should have been just handled differently.
I mean, it was handled how
Legally, I don't know.
dozens of other communities. That's how. That's
It
what
was
we.
gifted. Was it gifted? Was the terminology gifted to Verona?
I believe it was.
I think
Because
so.
gifted,
Yeah.
Vacant
not
property
sure.
it
recovery
wasn't
program.
sold to us.
No, the Monroe family, I think, gifted that. You're right.
I don't know what the verbiage was. I have to read it.
I'm almost positive.
You have to ask.
I'm not sure.
I don't think it was gifted. I think it was got through, you think eminent domain, vacant property.
With
recovery program.
cooperation from the original owner.
The corporation.
They.
In
I
cooperation
know
with
that
them.
means what I'm saying.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't, yeah, really.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think we need to revisit this. So.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely had full cooperation of the borough, which everyone who's a part of the garden is grateful for. We wouldn't have been able to acquire property without the assistance of the
Well, I think
borough.
it's great that you have that.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that I'm not negative about the garden.
I know.
I just think responsibility wise, I think we need to make it a responsibility of one of the community garden or whatever. Because we as a council are not in the growing business, is what I'm saying.
Right.
So it needs to fall under something, you know.
So I can definitely discuss with the members of the community garden and garden club and come back with some.
I would think Kimberly would be, you know, in favor of having it part of the urban garden.
Right.
It's a flower and garden club, so I don't think we should write it down.
We'll get back to
I-
everybody then.
The last thing I would just ask is like, this to me seems like a philosophical question.
Right.
Is like philosophically, what is this garden supposed to be? Is
Right.
this garden supposed to be really truly community driven and community run and for the community, like, you know, like, is that what it is? Or is this a government sponsored garden space? Because if we say that it's part of the government, then that answers how we need to structure things.
Mhm.
If we say this is really a community thing, then that governs how we would structure things. And then we just need to make sure that if that's, like in either case, we just need to know what do we legally need to do and not do so that we're not entangling ourselves in something that isn't the government.
And liability.
That's what I'm
Right.
confused about. Because, like, what is this park? Is it a community park? Or is it the borough's park? And what about Cribs? Is that a community park? Or is that a government entity that we have to mow the grass and take care of?
Well,
Same
Rick was a
thing.
gift. Rick was a gift.
Yes, yes, it was.
It was like that.
Yeah, but it's still on us. So
Yeah.
It's still a community park, but it's also a government, part of our infrastructure. Part of
Yeah.
Verona's infrastructure. It's a government entity, or it's a government piece of property, but it's also a community.
I have a question. If somebody fell, God forbid, but if somebody fell down at the community garden, who is responsible?
And it's not waivers.
Based on waivers.
We
Oh,
do
they
sign
do?
waivers.
Borough
Somebody
would
just
have
fell
insurance on
on
that
that, it would be like
Oh,
somebody-
okay.
We
if
do,
somebody
yeah.
just walked by
The borough
and
has
fell on it,
insurance.
so it'd be like somebody fell on it.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's good to know.
And as we all know, those waivers don't really mean nothing.
Yeah, they want to sue the.
Exactly. You're
True.
gonna pay.
So we do have insurance.
Right.
Oh,
Yes.
good.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're covered. Okay, thank you.
He's the-
And, okay, any more discussion on that? Before I put it over to Dave again. My apology, Dave.
No, no problem.
All right, Dave, you're going to talk on the welcome sign on
Yeah,
Wildwood.
I talked to Jeff Pepper on Saturday. He said that the other two welcome signs, I guess they're gonna start putting them up sometime, mid-July, he said. And, the two signs that are up there now will be coming down. And, we had talked about putting one up by, the Village Inn there. And John from the Pickle Factory owns that piece of property there, and, I don't know if anything more has been talked about amongst council on that. Assuming that property, taking responsibility of that little section.
David, where are they putting it?
Right at
With
the,
acclimation, is it gonna be?
right at the stop, right at the stop sign coming down Second Street.
Okay.
And to make it right there, it'll be right there
Oh,
on the right-hand side. It won't be in anybody's way, a line of vision or anything. Christine and, we went up there and, I showed her where it would be.
And they're gonna be continuously cutting the grass.
Well, that was one of the agreements that I had, we had talked about,
Because they just recently cut the grass.
right? That was one of the agreements in order to assume that, a lease on that property, like a trade-off more or less.
I think
So, and like I said, Jeff said that sign's coming. It's not something we have to put up, tomorrow, but it's a discussion for the board or whatever committee that would be, to make a decision on in the future there. The
How
other,
big of a piece of property, Dave, are we talking for our guys to cut?
it's from, just the width from the sidewalk to the curb. From the stop sign, up to about Shannon Road there, a little further than Shannon Road, but it's not very long.
probably
Like
green
50
grass.
feet,
Yeah,
like one
Did
pass.
we talk to our borough crew about it at all?
well, that's why I
Yes.
brought it up to the board, and they were gonna.
Yes, I did
inquire
talk.
about that.
They're okay with it?
No, they're not.
Well,
Because it's,
can't they just weed whack it?
well, it's private property.
Right.
And,
That's what I'm asking.
and then it's my understanding that it's not even in the borough. That it's Penn Hills.
Oh, boy.
So we'd be asking them to maintain private property in Penn
Well, that's
Hills.
something we have to, look at, to ask, Matt about, who owns the sidewalk out to the road, or does Penn Hills just own the road and the sidewalk is in Verona from the curb in?
I was told from Russell, when we had a problem with high grass and weeds there, that the Lamana, the people that had where acclimation is now,
Right,
that building owner was responsible for that piece of property for grass cutting and maintaining.
right, they are.
So that's in Verona, so is the village is.
But the road, from what I understand, is in Penn Hills, from Shannon Road to Wildwood, the island there. But is from the curb in Verona or Penn Hills? That's the question.
But I think we need to get back to on that one.
Yeah.
Yep.
We can't have our guys doing Penn Hills work.
Well, that island, we painted.
No, Penn Hills painted it the last time. We have painted it when
Yeah,
Bob was
that's-
here.
That's why
Bob
I thought
Gucci
it was-
was here.
I always thought that was ours.
Yeah, I did too. I
I
did
thought.
too.
I think we own further down.
I thought Matt said that
The island is
the
Penn
island is
Hills.
Penn Hills.
It is.
But I thought after that it became Verona.
That's right.
Well, you know what, Matt
You'd
takes care
ask-
of
Yeah,
that.
we'll talk to Matt on that. The other thing I have too is, East Railroad or West Railroad Avenue, I'm sorry. I may have told you East Railroad, I'm sorry, Christine. West Railroad Avenue, around the 400 block, is, somebody cuts grass and they just throw it over there into the weeds there. And it's a big pile of it, and I think we should, the whole length of West Railroad, every block from the 400 block all the way down to, I believe, the 200 block, behind Giant Eagle, we should put no dumping signs right in the middle of each block, with the sign. Because, I mean, it looks like heck down there. It really does.
There's no way to get the railroad to cut that. Is there?
I believe that is our responsibility of
The
cutting
whole
that.
hillside is over.
Yeah, we've always
It's
maintained that entire hillside in the past.
looking really bad.
It is very
Isn't
bad.
that railroad property though?
It is.
Then why are we maintaining it?
No, from the, if I remember from what Larry said, from the middle of the railroad property, there's so many feet going towards West Railroad is railroad property, and I believe that hill is our responsibility.
Oh, okay.
There's
We-
some kind of a measure from the middle of the
Yeah.
street, I thought.
Yeah.
We've had a tree down, at the other far end fall down, that was on that hillside by the railroad tracks. It was our responsibility to take it out.
Well, can you ask AJ, Christine, can they, weed whack?
Well, they've always maintained it in the past.
Well, evidently they haven't been doing it, so it needs to be done. I'm
Um,
surprised the people who live across the street haven't.
I thought it was 20 feet from the rail out.
Something like
Or
that.
I'm
I-
gonna lie to you, I don't know the footage.
Yeah, I don't
Somebody
remember
who
what it
works
was.
for the railroad was at the last, one of the meetings I was at, recently. She said 20 feet from the rail out. Because you're not allowed to build any structures within 20 feet of the rail.
Right,
Right.
right. That's what it is, I guess. Maybe
You
not.
look at where the Verona Gardens is, that's about 20 feet from where the rail.
Yeah, because we put those trees in there, and we cut that property there.
Okay, so if there's no dumping, we have to do it.
Right, put a sign in.
Well, put a sign in, but also weed whackers, it's clean.
Well, yeah.
We don't need no dumping, we're reading what we do.
The
We
other,
need to practice what we preach. and put up.
Sure. The other thing I have is part-time officers. I need officers. I only have three part-timers. Officer Saranovich, Officer Bradford, which is on leave on his, on him for the time being, and Officer Zachary, I can't pronounce his last name. He is also working in Indiana, and he's got a very good chance of leaving. So I only have three part-timers, and the chief and two sergeants, I only have three full-timers. I need men,
How
Or
many do you
women.
need,
Or
Dave?
women.
How many do you need?
whatever we can get, whatever we can afford.
Well, I saw your advertisement.
Well, yeah, I saw the advertisement too. I think there should be more information on that advertising. I mean, we do offer benefits for part-timers. That's kind of like selling a used car, I'm selling a 2015 Chevy Impala, and that's it, pretty much. Well, how many miles on it, got good tires on it, so on and so forth. And I think we need to add a lot of the benefits that we are giving the part-timers that have them now in that advertisement, so it'll attract people. Hey, you know what? They paid for holidays. Hey, we get hospitalization. We get some money for uniform allowance. We get a vacation after being there. We need something to attract them, not just help wanted sign, and that's it.
Right.
So I
Show
think
the-
it needs
show
to
the
be
benefits.
added more to that.
So we can, we just run into the problem of we don't have anything in writing. And I thought we were doing the part-timer stuff after we finished the
We
full-timer
were gonna
stuff.
add to the part-time stuff. Some other, and yes, we were, but I mean, it's in place now that, these part-timers, the three, part-timers that I have now, they get those benefits. So I think it's only fair to put it in with the ad so we can attract people. When I was at the Mayor's Association meeting or convention last year, I spoke on part-timers and the benefits that we give them. And everybody just looked at me and said, that's a good idea to attract them,
Yeah.
because they were just giving them X amount of dollar, and whatever hours you could work, and that was it. Here in Verona, I had started a lot of the benefits, giving, these part-time officers, to attract them and to keep them here.
It's a good drawing card.
Sure.
I
The
agree.
last thing I have is.
So I can do that. I just want to be clear that we cannot advertise medical because we are not permitted to provide medical to part-time employees.
Why?
It's an insurance thing. And if we get audited and they find that we've put part-timers on it, they can kick us off of insurance, or at least minimally kick that person off of insurance.
Makes no sense to me, but
It's
that's what
because,
it
it's
is.
because people are like, oh, my nephew has cancer. I'm gonna give him a part-time job and give him medical. And so insurance companies, they won't allow us to do that with part-time people.
What's the difference if you say, hey, my nephew has cancer, he's gonna get a full-time job in Toronto or any other place?
Well, then he's full-time. Basically, they're trying to prevent fraud by people just offering part-time jobs to people where it's not really a job, it's just enough to like give them benefits. So we can't do that.
I mean, to me, I understand what you're saying, but to me, it don't make no sense. I mean, you work 32 hours, that's a job, 32 hours.
We would just need to renegotiate that with Highmark.
But I think everything else should be in there.
Okay, seeing how we're having such a major problem, it didn't happen overnight. Maybe putting it, even if you have to on the back burner, I think consolidation should be something we need to entertain. With another community, because we're not making it.
Can I ask a wild question? I'm pretty sure the answer is no, but is there anything we can use from ARPA to provide an additional incentive such as a signing bonus to new officers?
There are things you can do, but I can't speak to it right now.
Okay, that's fair.
And it's mostly related to like hazard pay from what I read before.
Right.
And I'd have to dig into it.
Well, anything that we do, yeah, we have to go to the other two full-time. Well, actually, the third three, because the chief is.
It's a
our-
signing bonus, you don't.
Yeah. I
Oh,
guess-
yeah, okay.
Yeah, but the chief has a separate contract, he shouldn't even be involved.
Well, yeah, that, I would have to ask Craig, because he's hourly now. The chief.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering about that too, if that could be applied to them, but.
Right. We need something to attract people.
What did the
Right.
chief become hourly?
Well, he gets overtime, so, I mean, he was in a supervisor position, and the past consuls, they, gave him overtime pay. So I
But he's still
believe,
salary.
No, he's hourly.
I believe if you get overtime, you become hourly then.
He gives up his status.
Yeah. The salary, you get a lump,
That's costing us more money.
Yeah, we could look into that and move on that also very quickly. The other thing I have is personal and private signs on places on public property. And what I mean by that is anywhere that we like mulch, you see signs, like for, the pub down there. Over by the old Midway beer distributor by the Cannon, somebody put a help wanted sign in there with one of those flags. We maintain that property. And I don't think that, if we're gonna maintain it, I don't think people should be putting, signs like that,
I
on the property, because it does look tacky.
Very.
Now, you got stuff at get-go, that's their property, and we can't do nothing about it. But if we're maintaining and, mulching everything and cutting the grass, there shouldn't be nothing on the
Well,
property.
Christine, maybe you can send a letter to, I don't know what,
The,
10-7.
whatever. But I'm
The-
just saying, yeah, because they seem to be the one, the other side.
well, over by the boulevard there, the cutoff there from Allegheny River Boulevard onto Jones Street, there was all kind of signs. I had to have the chief go up there and move it because I had a couple complaints. When you wanted to make the left-hand turn to get on the boulevard, you couldn't see because there were signs there.
Well, let's
You know,
go on and fix it.
Well, would
Left-hand turn from where, Dave?
on Jones Street to make the left on
Oh,
the
Riverview
boulevard, that
Carpet.
little, yeah, by Riverview Carpet, that little cutoff there.
So you're allowed to go up there and make a left?
Yeah, we have those signs there. Yeah, so if you're coming down Jones, if you want to make a left to go back towards the town, you can make a left. And there was a couple signs there that we had to remove. You couldn't see. You had to actually go out onto the road more to see what was coming.
Yeah, they blocked the vision.
Yeah.
Well, I think DPW should have the, if Christine give them a heads up, you see him, pull them, fix it.
Yeah, if we maintain the property, they should be pulled.
Right.
I think we call the people, give them an opportunity to pull their own first. That's what I believe.
Right, no, I
You know,
agree.
These one signs, you don't even know who they are. It's like, hiring. all
No, I'm
this stuff.
talking about like the 10-7.
Right.
drafting
You give
people.
Well,
it
they can be sent
Yeah.
a letter or a notice.
Call them
yeah.
and say, hey, listen, here's what's going on.
That's fine.
Because them
yeah.
signs are expensive too,
Right.
That's
I
fine,
agree.
but I'm saying the other sign.
Yeah.
Pull them, fix them,
Right.
fix it.
A few years ago, we had a permit for signs on borough property. I had to approach council and fill the permit out and ask council for permission to have, because PISA was gonna donate their facility to Parks and Recreation for a football court. And in order for them to make this deal with us, they want to put signs at Cribs and Memorial Park and Railroad Park up for their summer youth camp. I had to fill out a sign permit and approach council and ask council to vote on permission to put those signs
And
up.
how, what was your time, because I'm gonna tell you a story with this. What was your time allotment by, filling out that application? Were you permitted to keep those signs up?
I believe it was 2 months or a month.
Or was it that long?
Well, their summer camp, they started advertising in, I think, May. Put them down in June. Yeah, somewhere around there.
Because even across the river, when I was doing the creative marketplace, it's exactly correct. You fill in, and you were only given so many
Yes,
days.
yes,
And then, if you didn't go pick them up, they'll fine you.
yes.
And I don't have a
So-
problem with that. It's just that we're starting to get businesses and they're constantly there.
Yeah.
You
They
know,
should
like,
fill out a permit.
and like, well, I don't even think they should be,
Should be allowed to do it.
yeah, it's up to the board. Like I said, it's up there by the cannon. There's a, help one, it's on for ATL. So I don't know. I never even heard of the company. I don't even think it's in Verona, to be honest with you. And they got one of those flags, that-
I
Yeah.
saw
Right.
that,
yeah. I mean, it shouldn't be allowed there. It looks junky.
No.
But there should
Right.
still be a permit application because there are still certainly the guard or chamber's still gonna want to put signs up for the farmers. That's, they're gonna want to put it up at Cribs, they're gonna want to put it by the cannon or by the steps. They're gonna wanna
Well,
put it
you know
there.
what, I would have to talk to Craig maybe for, for like some type of event, would be permissible, with, but a business that's advertising their business or, something like that, it should not be allowed.
I believe on that permit, it did say, is this for a public event versus for a private business advertising?
Right.
I had to fill it all out and present it to
I
council,
know what you do.
because PISA is a private business. They granted it, but there were terms, there were a term of time limit that had to be removed by, if it wasn't removed, the borough removed it, and fined them for
Because some of the,
I think
yeah,
there,
some of the businesses I see, they got a big sign and I see them laying on the ground because they get knocked over. You know what I mean?
How would you create a policy saying, if it's like a borough event, like Bonnie and Blues, I mean, you want to see the sign.
I have no problem with that.
But I'm saying for anything outside.
I'm just saying, there's probably something in the office in one of the filing cabinets from a couple of years ago for us to
But
start.
really, because it starts like looking junky,
Yeah, it
Sure.
does.
too many signs.
Oh, that's all I have.
Okay. Thank you,
Oh, one
Dave.
more thing, I'm sorry. I just wanted to make a comment about the garden walk. It was very nice. I was on it again. I was actually, when Mary Ann Brer started it,
Oh,
I
I
was
know.
on from the very beginning, been on ever since. I had 19 people come through my yard, to look at, my yard and flowers. Yeah, 20. Yeah, so it was very
That's
nice, and thank you to the garden club, everybody that was involved for putting it on. It's a great time, and thank you once again for all the volunteering that they do.
Flowers look very nice
That's all I
too.
got.
Yeah.
It was okay,
Thank you.
Angela.
'cause I had to work. Either not
I
or
saw it
this.
too on Facebook. Real nice. You did a good job. Green thumb. Okay, 13 Deer Crossing sign request, Christine.
yeah, there was a request that came in from a resident that lives on Wildwood for the installation of a deer crossing sign.
There's deer crossing everywhere.
There are
There
deer
is,
everywhere.
on Third. What do you
Yeah,
got?
I see them in my front yard. They're down here
They're
at
in
this
my
park
house
every night.
yard, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
They're
in my yard.
everywhere. They're
We can put
everywhere.
a sign on every street. I mean, come on, people, let's.
I
face
do one in front
reality.
of my
There's
house.
deer
There's
everywhere.
6 in my yard every night. So,
I counted 18 of them down, and that's no lie, at Grant Street and East Railroad. After a meeting one time, it was about 10:30. They were all in the road there.
They were in that old house that burnt down.
Get out of here.
The parking lot, not the one that just burnt down, the one on the corner. you know, of East Railroad and Grant. And they just sit where the parking lot is.
They're not afraid to move either.
No.
Well, they become so acclimated.
Yeah.
I mean, Allegheny River Boulevard's been like that forever.
Yeah.
You always see. beavers.
So what are we saying, yay or nay?
Are they saying any particular spot on Wildwood? I mean, I know they're.
Right where the welcome sign should go.
There there is a lot of them.
Tell them to call Penn Hills.
Oh, that's.
So there's actually a deer crossing sign in Penn Hills going in the other direction. They want one on the downhill direction.
I don't see it.
So-
Yeah,
I
but if
mean-
if there's one in Penn Hills going in one direction, then you should contact Penn Hills. Put one on the opposite
Does
side
it,
of
do the
road.
deer know that there's not one in?
Yeah,
Yeah, right?
I mean, that would make sense.
They should
So-
just cross right
Is
there.
it costly for them to put it up?
We just need, we don't have one right now, so we would just need to make one. And the only other thing is, in that particular stretch, you know, it's the place where the welcome sign would potentially go, a bunch of parking lots, and then you get to, you know, residential stuff. So I don't even think there's necessarily, and when I didn't drive up there, but I went to Google Street View, and there looks like there's like one little dirt area near a telephone pole that maybe you could put a sign. But then my concern would be if you're in the parking lot,
You see. from
not
there.
being able to see coming out, because then there's a big old, I mean, because those are big signs. It's not like
Yeah.
a little itty bitty
Right,
thing.
right.
So I don't know that there's a great place for it. I can talk to AJ if you're all, I mean, this has to be decided upon, especially if there's a cost to do one, and we would need to send it forward for a vote. But if we're sitting right here and like the 5 of you are like, no way, then we kind of already have.
We don't know the expensive.
I would say push off, like, wait till the welcome sign is installed.
So that's a good thought too.
Yeah.
You ever sit-
Because you might put it up and then it makes the welcome sign look bad, and we should put it in a different place. We should put the welcome sign up first and then decide.
What was the timeline though for the third?
That's been new with Avenue.
The welcome
What?
sign up
And
there.
that's I'm not,
July.
I'm not
So
being
it's gonna
like
come at the same
cute.
time as.
They could possibly contact Penn Hills and say, I see you have.
Call the county,
deer
it's a county
crossing
road.
sign. Would you be willing to put one on the other side of the road facing the other direction?
Great to say it's a county road.
It is a county road.
Yeah.
You ever see those signs on the side of the road? It has, or on the road, it has a car, then it has the zigzagging lines.
Yeah,
You know what that's for?
Yeah.
You're allowed to do burnouts. That's what it means.
yeah.
Burnouts
I'll
allowed.
cheat that next time.
Hey, it says do burnouts,
Yeah.
right?
Well, so we decided we'll put the welcome sign and then we'll, you know, in the meantime, can you call Penn Hills or the state to see if they can provide us?
Well, that's a county road
County.
there.
A county?
County.
What I say, county?
Yeah. that's-
I guess the question is where are they gonna put it?
That's. the
So
question.
like if the county's like, yeah, we'll put it there, and then they stick it right in the corner where the welcome
Yeah, we
sign's
don't
supposed to
want
go,
that.
Put it
then
up where
Hold off.
Wildwood turns into Bruin Road.
I'd say hold off.
That's-
I'd
Yeah.
personally say hold off until the welcome sign.
I'll agree
Yeah.
with Ray.
Yeah, I think we should wait. for this.
It hasn't been here for. So
It's not like the deer just started running.
You put a sign up, the deer are still gonna cross.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's not gonna stop.
They can't read.
Yeah.
Well, if you do it for one, you're gonna have to do it for everybody, because there's deer everywhere. You know, how do you limit it, really? But anyhow, okay, Christine, Phones Plus, last one, number 14.
So this one is, I got an email from Phones Plus, who's our vendor for the phone system. And basically, there have been hackers gaining access to the various systems. Blah, 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 blah. The bottom line is that service that we currently have where somebody can call and leave a voicemail for any of you, and then it turns into an email and is sent to you. That service now costs $10 a month.
Total or per person?
The way it reads, it's total. And so the question is, do we want to do this? Have any of you ever gotten a voicemail that turned into an email?
I say lose it too.
Matlin
just
said he got
listen?
one.
You got one. So I guess, I mean, like, we'll have to do a vote on this because it's a money thing. And I can move it forward to the business meeting, but to me, it's like,
I think it's an unneeded expense.
I do
Yes,
too.
it's frivolous, yeah, we don't.
But I'm also
Everybody
not
that gets a
gonna,
hold of their phone and resell anyway.
Yeah, because I'm not gonna call in and check.
I've never looked at that or touched that.
You know how to do that, since we've had it.
I mean, we can just change the voicemail and get rid of that option so that, because most people aren't going to check. Most people aren't ever going to get a voicemail, ever.
I got one, it was
You gotta check.
yeah, it was the wrong number.
You gotta
But I
check your
got an
license.
email saying you got a voicemail and I called it, listened to it.
Your car warranty is expired.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there's a lot of interest in not having that.
Yes.
So I guess my question is, do I need to move that to business? Or is it,
I think you should be able to just do it. You're
Yeah,
saving
$10,
money.
yeah.
Yeah,
We need a vote?
$10.
I mean,
$20.
I can
Right.
just tell them we don't want it. It
Yeah.
doesn't sound like anybody wants it.
No.
And then what we can do is change the voicemail to,
Everything goes to Christine and she can email us.
that basically says, leave a message here.
Yeah.
And the message we pass along, or email the council person.
Yeah.
And then, blah, 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 but the
I
email
haven't got
address
one
is
since
on.
I've been on. Not that I have any friends.
All right. So that's that.
Okay,
And then can I just share one other piece of news that y'all might be interested in?
yes.
AJ and the guys just completely cleaned house on 204 West Railroad. If you've been down there, that it's like the grass is this tall now.
On the house of burnt.
The house that
I
burned.
saw it.
So that's, I mean, it took them all day, but they got it done. And so now they can keep that under control. And then with regard to 558 Church and 473 Union, we finally got a landscaping company to agree to clean it up. It was actually harder than you would think. People don't want to do that kind of job. So, so we need to get our guys in there to clean up the garbage because they won't do the garbage removal,
And why are we cleaning up by 58?
because that's what was in the, that was the thing that was passed saying that I can get that stuff cleaned up, and we're trying to get that cleaned up.
I
That's been,
thought, Dory was buying that property.
it's going through the vacant property recovery program. It's still going to take another year for that to process, because that program just takes a very long time to work through. And in the meantime, there are
Neighbors.
reports of rats. Now, I just want to be very clear that the exterminator's been up there. Mike and Matt have been in there. All of those people are saying the rats are not living in the house. There is no evidence of rodent infestation in the house. So if there are rodents in that property, they may be living outside in the grass, but the most likely the food source is coming from neighbors who haven't cleaned up after their dogs and such. So, so that particular property, as well as 473 Union, there are a lot of complaints about that one, illegal dumping in between homes. Those two are going to get cleaned up. I'm hoping soon. And $300 per property.
I was like, gonna ask this.
The other option we had, there were two companies that were willing to do it. One will charge $300 per property. The other one charges $95 per person per hour, and they always send 2 people. So it would have been $190 per hour. And these are,
My question is, if Dory already applied for this vacant property, why are we cleaning it up when it's gonna end up going to her anyway?
Because it's gonna accumulate over the next year and make the problem worse.
That vacant property probably goes faster. I just don't feel like,
But would you, the neighbors up there are tired of looking at it. Would you want to live next to something like that?
that property has been like that for
Yeah.
the last 20 years.
the other piece is that we have now condemned both of these properties. And so now if we want to do the right thing, we are responsible for making sure these aren't nuisance
I
properties.
thought we uncondemned.
We did not uncondemn it.
Like,
Still
if they
condemn.
did, why is Dory buying, why are we allowing her to buy it?
She can get a condemned property. A condemned.
It can still be
Yeah,
rehabbed.
but
It
we
can
were
be-
going to tear that down. It was on our list to tear it down.
Now we don't have to pay to do it.
We didn't get the grant anyway, so.
Christine, the one on West Railroad Avenue, the one that caught on fire.
Yes.
My understanding is he had a son or a daughter or something, and they didn't want nothing to do with the property.
Mhm.
And I don't understand why we can't get this solicitor, something you could ask them to send them a letter if they would give the borough the property since we're tearing it down at our expense.
It's not gonna be at our expense. It would be with grant money if we get grant money. If we don't get grant money, then we need to have a conversation about what will be used general fund dollars to do that.
Are you sure that we didn't get that money for?
We did not get the CDBG demolition money.
So then-
I'm looking real fast right now.
We didn't get it.
We didn't get.
We
So
did,
we're-
we did not get it.
So we're not going to get money to rip that house down.
Well, there's still Act 152 grant application out there, and 204 West Railroad was included in that one as well, in case we didn't get the CDBG funds.
Okay, once we get that fund, if we do, hopefully, we'll tear it down with that fund. Then, write the people a letter, say, would you, give us the property, so we could put it on the market, sell it. Or do something with it, rather than maintain it for the rest of our lives. They don't want it, they have, they don't want nothing to do with the property.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's a conversation to figure out, like, what happens if we don't get the grant money, or even if we do, how are we gonna handle that? But I just wanted to provide an FYI that those two properties that we've condemned will be cleaned up. I hope soon. I'm still working to figure out what that schedule will be.
I have a question about, I know more. How much cleanup do you think needs?
It's kind of hard to know because it's just so overgrown.
So
And-
it's not inside, it's on the outside.
It's outside, and there's a lot of poison ivy there. So it's not like anybody
Not
wants to
visible
just,
garbage, it's just
they're just
a
not
lot
visible.
overgrown.
It's just way overgrown, and what nobody knows is when you move the poison ivy out of the way,
Not get busted, but-
yeah, like, who knows? But that
I know
one,
north is visible.
the Union
There's
one, you
visible
mean?
garbage.
Union, the
Yeah,
473 Union?
I'm sorry, I don't want to.
Yeah, that one has visible garbage.
I just see it on that. 'Cause I know they inspect it, I don't know if were they waiting for garbage to inspect it, or was it just most of the gas?
It was mostly poison ivy. They all ended up with poison ivy. It's really, there's like a poison ivy tree. I mean, it's bad.
So there's a lot of those back there.
So hopefully that happens soon, so we can cross that off the list. All right, now I'm finished, Sylvia. Thank you.
Oh, you're all done?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I have my communication here, and let me start with that. Newsletter articles and the ads are due Monday, August 1st. If you can please start getting them in, that would be great. Sooner we get them, excuse me, the sooner we go to the printer. So for your articles, please email them to Donald Ward at veronanewsroom@gmail.com. And I handle all the ads, and I can be reached at 412-828-9542. Chamber of Commerce, we had a chamber meeting on Tuesday, June 21, and President Kevin Ewing announced we had a total of 7 Charles McKinley scholarships awarded to our Verona students. 5 students got $1,000 in scholarships, and that was $1,000 each, excuse me. And 2 students got $500 each of the Charles McKinley Scholarship. These were both, of these categories were both very deserving children that will really take advantage of them, and they were very appreciative. Kennywood Picnic is Wednesday, July 13th, and tickets are now on sale at the Verona News Store. And the prices are, an all-day ride is $50 at the gate, and they're selling them here for $31. So that's a $19 savings, not a bad deal. And the senior price is $40 at the gate, but we're selling them for $27, which is a nice $13 savings. And next chamber meeting will be Tuesday, July 19th, 7 p.m. here in the municipal building. Verona Historical Society. There will be no meeting this month, but they are going to do a trip to Falling Water. Twin Borough Ministries, the community dinner will be tomorrow, 4:30 to 6:30, and it will be hosted by the Verona Methodist Church. And soups are still available if anyone is interested to place an order. They can call Shirley Davis at 412-828-3412. I spoke with ALOM this morning, and they should have some events on schedule and on calendar starting in September. And if there are any questions or comments, I'll be glad to answer them. And if not, this concludes my reports, and I thank you. And with that, we can now, council will hear comments from the public at this time. Please approach the podium or raise your virtual hand and clearly state your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
Hi.
Hi, Nancy.
Hey, I have a couple of questions, and, some food for thought. One on the, dock. I don't know, maybe Christine will know this, very simple. When we were down for the pawpaw trees, the one piece of the public dock is that, do you know about that?
Yes.
Okay. With regards to the salt situation, just want to remind people that wherever you end up putting that, it's either going to be in the district, in the business district, or it's going to be in the residential district. So when you put it on Arch Street, it's not like it's hidden away and nobody notices that the trucks are there at 2 in the morning, with beep, 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 and the big lights. It will leave the residual of the salt, whether the river was there or not, it's in a very residential area out there. So I personally like the idea of putting it over here, even though we would use some parking places. You know, I don't have all the information. It's just person's opinion. And I just wondered with the LED lights, I also asked Matt about this in the very beginning. There's a light right across from my dining room. It lights up my dining room and my kitchen. I don't need any lights because it is so bright. So I know exactly what this guy is talking about. It's awful. You know, sometimes at night you want it to be dark and there's no way for me to make it dark. And I asked Matt about a shield, and then, you know, particularly other things. Personally, in my opinion, I think that 50-50 deal would be nice, you know, and I don't know about the whole neighborhood thing, but this is only shining into my house. I don't know that it's really affecting anybody else. But I'd be willing to pay, certainly, yeah, I'd be willing to pay the whole thing, but, you know, and I wonder also, can contain light put in less bright LED lights? I mean, incandescents, you know, you have to bump up the wattage to get the same amount of light as an LED. So why couldn't we just put in, I mean, it's blasting, it's like a searchlight going into my house. So I just wanted to mention that. And also wanted to, Sylvia, we talked about this. Are you guys going to do August dinner?
I spoke with Shirley about that today, and she's going to give us some thought of what possibly would be on the menu.
Well,
Well, we're
they want to do August.
well,
It hasn't been brought up.
Yeah, that's why I brought it. Thank you.
no, I was going to bring it up at the next meeting, but we can bring it up now because it's almost July anyhow. This would be for August. So while we're here, I'm going to put it out then. What is the consensus of council sponsoring or hosting the August dinner, the community dinner. Are you all in favor? Not in favor? What is your feeling about this?
I don't have a problem.
I don't either.
It's not the week of wrestling. I'm a little busy that week. Wrestling's last Saturday.
We'll bring it back up at the next meeting.
Yeah, we don't have that many people here anyhow. That's another reason I wasn't saying anything.
I have a question to council about this lot over here.
Okay.
Verona owns this parking lot, correct?
Yes.
Basically,
Okay,
not totally.
what do you mean?
Check, ask Matt.
Whose name's on the deed of the property? So,
Nothing to check into, because it may be. part of the road.
this parking lot is, if it's owned by Verona, we aren't really using it. So are we collecting any money from the chamber or any of the businesses that are actually?
There's parking permits on both parking lots.
So it says parking permit.
Yeah, so
It's
then
on
you
my-
buy parking permits for both parking lots. And after 5 PM, it's open to the public.
So if we were to.
Saturdays is free also.
So if we were to put the salt shed here in this parking lot, like Matt suggested, then we're only losing 6 to 10 parking permit spots.
We're not even at capacity.
No,
That's what I mean, so we're not really
We're not
losing any.
We're not losing any revenue on parking.
So Hoover would
permits.
lose parking spots and Intergroup would lose
Yeah.
parking
Yeah,
spots.
but
Well, let's be clear, the businesses themselves aren't losing the spots because the businesses don't own the lot.
That-
There are fewer public parking spots available for local businesses,
Unless we open the
lot.
unless we open the lot here.
But I mean, that's my point.
We do have a raised hand from Tim Long online.
Oh, okay. Tim, you're on.
Hello, yes, I just forgot to mention earlier in my segment that July movie in the parks will be July 15th. It will start at dark around 9:30, and it will be Star Wars: A New Hope.
Oh, okay. Thank you for sharing that.
That's a
Appreciate it,
Chris,
Tim.
correct?
Yes, that will be at Cribs.
Thank you, Tim, for sharing. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Do you need to request popcorn or anything?
I was just gonna go by. Bob. I
Okay.
thought it was nice. They sell like a 5-gallon bottle.
Okay, sounds good.
Don, would you like to give your name?
How about this? You're talking about using the parking lot here. What about using that section where it shows that tree stump? I believe if the railroad gave her permission to put it there. And you might give us permission to use that section as a place to sell. Yeah, that's why I asked her.
All right, I'll find it out.
Yeah.
So that, I don't think that was brought up, that plan, but I mean, that section of land there would be a wonderful place.
I can ask, any of his property.
Any land.
Just gotta watch where the tracks are there. If it's 20 foot,
That's
20 foot from the tracks.
Oh, you think it is 20 feet?
I don't know. That's, I'm saying if it is,
Right.
if it is, I'm not sure.
Okay, I'll do my.
Yeah, I mean, that's a thought, but,
Right.
you know,
I'll do it.
We do have one other raised hand online from Kathy Maddox.
Okay, Kathy, you're on.
Hey, it's Kathy Max, 234 Penn Street. I just want to thank all the efforts put into getting 204 West Railroad cleaned up. And I want to confirm the best course of action currently for reporting ordinance or violations. I know we have the tip sheets. Is it still, or are we at the point where we're able to submit those online?
We're hoping the new website should be launching in the middle of July.
Okay,
It won't have full functionality, but it's important to launch it anyway, frankly. And so there will be a way to, tip sheets will be handled the same way as just like a contact us. And so that can be done online when it launches in a couple of weeks.
okay, I'm not familiar with what that is, but you're saying that they eventually will be able to be completed and submitted online.
Yes.
Cool, all right, thank you, that's it.
Thank you, Kathy. Anybody else?
Looks like that's it.
Okay, if there's no other business, then I'll entertain a motion to
I'll make that
adjourn.
motion.
Okay. Okay, made by Ray, seconded by Rhoda. All right, thank you and good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming.
Christine, I'm shocked that we didn't get any